We're live.
All right, let us begin. Somebody has their mic on and is typing actively. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Township of Georgian Bay Council meeting of December 13th, 2021. It's 9:01, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. And in the spirit of reconciliation, I wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories that they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place. The land, the water, the sky, and all that live in, on, above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take actions towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. Any declarations of pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest or conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I'm going to immediately break away from the agenda in front of you because we're going to honor two of our staff members, namely Karina King and Tony Van Dam. And if I understand it correctly, they have both been with us for 5 years.
That's correct.
So I don't know if anybody else wishes to say anything, or do I just do my bit and say express my great gratitude on behalf of all the residents and staff and council in regard to your service to this township for the past 5 years. I know that we feel a lot safer and have things better under control because of what the two of you do for us. And I'm very grateful for that. So thank you very much and congratulations. And of course, the next things we do is I shake your hands, I hand you a certificate, and we pose for pictures. So let's all imagine that we've done that. You wish to say anything, either, I'll start with our chief, Van Dam.
So for me, I appreciate council support, especially in the last, I'm going to say 2 years. It's been a trying time not being able to do the things that you would normally do, but we've been working diligently to do the best that we can, and it's nice to have council support for that. So thank you.
Ms. King?
Yeah, just thank you so much for the support and the recognition today. We really appreciate it.
Well, here's to another 5 years at least. So, again, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for your service. All right. Next on our list is a delegation.
For Ms. Louder, she is in the room. She would like to turn her camera on, and she, I believe, has a presentation as well that she can share her screen.
All right, Ms. Louder. The screen is yours.
Can we see that okay?
Yes, we can, and we can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Please go ahead.
Need to remove myself so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay. So I'm just presenting a petition that I started in September against the BTK pesticide. So as a local beekeeper and the Queen Bee founding chair for the Township of Georgian Bay Honeybee Festival, I would like to petition against a full ban of the BTK pesticide found in the gypsy moth caterpillar spray within the township of Georgian Bay. So who am I? A lot of you know who I am already, but for those of you who don't, my name is Elizabeth Lauder. I'm a local beekeeper in Honey Harbor. I'm the founding chair for the Honey Bee Festival. I'm an educator for Trillium Lakelands District School Board. I'm a director for the Baxter Ward Lions Club. I'm a volunteer firefighter for the Township of Georgian Bay. And I'm a member of the Ontario Beekeeping Association and a graduate from the beekeeping program at the University of Guelph Honeybee Research Center. I represent the organizations I work for and volunteer with pride as I share the same interests, goals, and values. So what I'm requesting from the Township of Georgian Bay, or what anyone who signed the petition is requesting, is that the Township of Georgian Bay to provide environmentally and economically sustainable pest control options for the LDD European gypsy moth to seasonal and long-term residents, which I think you're already doing, that do not include the use of BTK pesticide or aerial spray programs. There needs to be a ban or bylaw in place to prevent privately arranged aerial spray programs. Why a petition against the BTK pesticide? So we live in an environmentally conscious and protected area that is on Georgian Bay, on the Georgian Bay Biosphere, and is one of the few freshwater UNESCO biospheres in the world. It is a bee city and has one of the first bee city golf courses in Canada. Georgian Bay Township works closely with the Severn Sound Environmental Association and runs their very own honeybee festival to protect pollinators. This petition was started in fears of a potential aerial spray program that is being organized privately within the Township of Georgian Bay. I have 8 honeybee colonies within 7 kilometers, and bees can travel up to 7 kilometers from their hive of the residents that are interested in the program. So the consensus between all the organizations that I've contacted is that they agree that the program is costly financially and environmentally, and it is not effective. So here's a map. I am located at the 3-kilometer mark down here, and the interested residents are over here at the 0 mark. So it's only 3 kilometers away from my colonies. Why not spray for the LDD moth? They're such a pain. So the use of the BTK pesticide could have potentially harmful side effects to our natural environment and could directly impact pollinators, honeybees, butterflies, moths, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and more natural elements in our environment. And the history of Honey Harbor, which some of you may or may not know, and I learned this at the University of Guelph, is the name Honey Harbor comes from honeybees. So Honey Harbor was once a location for bee studies in the early 1800s. Beehives were sent from Beaton, which was originally called Beetown, by train. The main reason for studies being done in Honey Harbor was due to the easy and direct access to many of the islands on Georgian Bay. Because bees don't travel across large bodies of water, it was the prime location to conduct concentrated studies on bees, their behavior, navigation, health benefits of products, breeding, and honeybee diseases without cross-contamination from colonies of nearby islands, so they wouldn't fly across to other islands. This allowed researchers to investigate and collect information in the same environment as other nearby island apiaries, allowing more conclusive results. So it was a way to kind of contain their studies. So how does it work? Long story short, it's a stomach poison for insects. So BTK needs to be used at a very specific time when the gypsy moth caterpillar is at the right age. So using this as a pesticide won't kill all of the caterpillars, and therefore will be mostly lost in the natural environment. It will be costly financially and environmentally and not effective. Oh, there we go. Sorry. And the Ontario Beekeepers Association is strongly encouraging that we do not spray, and it will protect all of the pollinators and bees. So sublethal doses of harmful chemicals in the brood chamber, so that's the beehive, they slowly build up over time. So when they're gathering pollen or nectar, it will kill the larvae within the hive. Bee City Canada. So I wrote Bee City Canada, and Shelley got back to me, who's the founder. And she just said, do not spray, but there's what she said. And just to remind you that Bee City Canada, all participants must commit to creating and maintaining or improving pollinator habitat, educating their community, employees, or customers about the importance of pollinators, and celebrating pollinators during National Pollinator Week or at other times, which right now the Township of Georgian Bay does. If we were to spray, we could eliminate all of those things. Pollinator Partnership Canada works closely with Bee City Canada. So the most common products used for gypsy moth is BTK. BTK is considered non-toxic to bees, meaning that it doesn't kill them, but it has been shown to impact their gut nutrition and growth because it is a stomach poison. Ontario Parks, as we know, wasn't spraying and won't spray because they don't target just the LDD moth. They also target other species, and if it did target just that caterpillar, then I would say go for it, but the problem is it doesn't. So also it affects birds as well, because birds feed during that time of year. So that's Ontario Parks' concern. Parks Canada is not spraying as well, and that would be Beausoleil Island. They are looking into it because people are asking about it. But at the same time, Parks Canada is consulting with Indigenous groups, partners, and stakeholders, including residents of enclave communities, representatives of environmental organizations, and those in the forestry and tourism sectors. But they just said they're not spraying. I found an article on Return of the Native regarding Tiny Township. So Tiny Township has decided not to partake in aerial spray programs. They know that outbreaks occur every 7 to 10 years and last for about 1 to 3 years. So right now we're in the 1 to 3 year category. The population collapses naturally due to fungus, a virus, and other predators and parasites. It's an endemic. It's not going to disappear from our environment, and spraying will not reduce its numbers in the following year. And despite pressure from residents, Tiny Township Council declined to engage in an aerial spray program. And the Severn Sound Environmental Association pointed out negative impacts on native caterpillars and the food web. The County of Simcoe said municipal aerial spray programs is not effective, cost effective. So Severn Sound Environmental Association. So this is where I found a lot of the information on the Georgian Bay Township website on how to combat the moths. So they have said that if you are going to spray, the township is responsible for establishing applicable bylaws. So the implementation of a spray program, including spray blocks, as well as significant public communication such as billboards, social media, newsletters, radio, TV, website, public meetings, and establishing temporary road closures during spray applications where applicable. So that one concerned me a lot. If it's not affecting our health, and why are we closing roads when we're spraying? The spray contractor has responsibilities for obtaining permits and authorizations, and for knowing and adhering to all applicable guidelines and requirements. So there is a press release down below there just saying that naturally the moths will decline. Georgian Bay Biosphere, when contacting people from there, they just say do not spray again. But the main thing is not around water. We live on Georgian Bay. That's a little difficult. Although BTK can help reduce the population to more manageable levels, it does not eradicate all LDD moth insects. And they're also suggesting physical removal and just let the natural predators do their job. This is a map of the boundary of the biosphere. So the biosphere is this purple line. Federal parks are the green. First Nations territories are the pink. Provincial parks are the lime green, and then conservation reserves are the striped areas. So I'm the star right smack dab in the middle. I'm right beside the federal park. I'm in the biosphere, and I'm on First Nations land. And then I'm located right smack dab in the middle again of Ward 4, which is where the aerial spray program is being considered. So for my support currently, we have 140 signatures against the use of the spray from local residents, cottagers, seasonal rentals in the local area. I have had 3 residents remove themselves from the spray program list as they felt they were not informed of the cost to the environment and our pollinators. I also feel that residents are not being informed on the potential effects of the spray program, as I was not given the opportunity to seek out more information about the program itself, who was organizing it, and the contact information for the spray company being used. There seems to be a lack of transparency and honesty with the program organizer, whoever that might be. So I need your support, or we need the township's support. So without the support of the Georgian Bay Township, I worry about the environmental impacts of a privately arranged aerial spray program on our fragile environment. I'm also concerned about the cost to the local residents and cottagers for a program that will not combat the LDD moth infestation, and also the optics from other affiliated organizations in nearby municipalities if a spray program were to take place in the township of Georgian Bay. A bylaw against the aerial spray programs and the use of pesticides within the township of Georgian Bay needs to be in effect to prevent the risk of environmental impacts. First Nations territories within the UNESCO Georgian Bay Biosphere would also need to be considered and consulted about an aerial spray program taking place near and in First Nations territories. And any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm wondering, Ms. Louder, if you could stop sharing your screen, or you want us to see a few bees first here, I gather. There we go.
It's okay.
Council, any questions at this point? And while you're thinking about that, I would like to explain to everybody, we're going to mess up the order of the agenda slightly, in that I will very shortly call for approval of the regular agenda and then move item 10A from new business up to be immediately considered, simply because it was in regards to the LLD's moth spraying program. And so if anybody has any questions right now, I'm sure Ms. Louder will be happy to take them, but I'm also hoping, Ms. Louder, you'll stick around for a few more minutes as we discuss that one item in our regular agenda. Councilor Wienko, I believe I saw your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. You spent a lot of time talking about spraying in the Honey Harbor area and the Biosphere area and so on. I'm with Ward 1 and 3, which is not necessarily in the Biosphere, and we have a lot of cottages up along 6 Mile and Gloucester Pool who are getting involved in it. And there's a whole number of individuals involved. This is not one big group. There's a bunch of individuals involved. Are there any hives, honeybee hives, or any groups of honeybees up in the Ward 1 and 3 areas?
There are a few. I know a lot of the beekeepers that I contacted for just being in the marketplace at the festival, they just don't have a lot of bees. I know there's some down South Bay. There's a lot more here than we think there are. I can find out directly, but I don't know 100% where they're located.
So just to follow up, what are your feelings about limited spraying up in Ward 1 and 3 outside of the biosphere?
I just worry about the cross spray of that, and it's not just honeybees that I'm concerned about, it's all pollinators. And it just blowing over, it's really hard when you're doing an aerial spray program like that to contain where that spray is going. And if a neighbor of a property, you can't control, if someone is spraying right next door, it's obviously going to come onto our property too. So I think that's the overall issue. I'm not fully against like the BTK spray being applied directly to the trees, but just not with a flying airplane just bombing everything. You can spray it locally, which I think is the better option.
Okay, at this point, I see no, oh, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. And Elizabeth, I noticed in your presentation that there were a number of municipalities that were not going to undertake spraying, but it didn't say they were banning it. Can you clarify that, please?
Correct. So City of Toronto and Tiny Township have just said that they are not conducting a spray program as a municipality or a township, but they haven't banned private spraying, like privately arranged spraying. That's right.
So my follow-up question is there any municipality in our area that's banned this?
I don't think so.
Councillor Jarvis.
I guess just for clarification, follow up to Councillor Cooper, Elizabeth. One, I've done a bit of reading up, and I noticed that BTK can have a rollover effect on other caterpillars which are native, which I think is something we've really got to consider in this. But just to clarify, you're not suggesting that if somebody wanted to use BTK on their own property, that we actually ban it. You just don't want it to encourage us to allow aerial spraying, correct?
Yeah, I feel, yeah, I would like to ban aerial spray programs, period. I feel that's more detrimental to the overall environment, where if you were to do local spraying, then you would just need to contact whoever you need to contact and be educated and know how to use the product.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that because I've got a few constituents in my area that did some local, did spraying on their own property and seemed to have some success with it. And I know of others who've done the same. I'm still concerned because I don't like the idea of any kind of insecticide being applied because of the rollover effect on other species, but maybe that's all we can do is try and ban the aerial part of it. But thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Council, at this point, because I don't see any other hands, as I implied before, I'm suggesting that the recommendation of our clerk that we do things a little bit out of order. And the first thing that we would do would be to, oh, sorry about the phone in the background, please ignore it. The first thing we would do would be to pass the resolution for our regular agenda. And the reason we would do that would simply be so that we can get to discuss one of the items on the regular agenda. Then we'd go back to our normal agenda. I'm trying to find where that actual, what page you put that motion on, because we also have a
Page
few
6.
changes. Sorry?
Page 6.
Page 6. Thank you very much. Because the other, in this agenda, not only do I want to amend it for the order, but we're going to also add in on under new business 10D, an item with regards to deferral of an annual building permit fee increase. And Council, I don't know if there's any other amendments that you'd want to be considered at for this regular agenda. I'm not seeing any, so that what I have in front of me is moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council adopts the regular agenda of December 13th, 2021 as amended to include 10D, deferral for building fee, permit fee annual increase. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And then what we're like to do now is suggest that we do things slightly out of order and go to 10A, which was a item with regards to gypsy moth spraying. And Councillor Bocek, I believe you put this topic forward, and it ties in beautifully with the presentation we just had. So I think it might be a good time to talk about it. Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. It's very informative. The reason that this item was brought up to the agenda was because there was a lot of requests for aerial spraying from my ward, being Little Lake and Gloucester Pool. And a lot of my constituents asked me what my outlook or my feelings was on the aerial spraying. And I've been very clear that I'm not in favor of it. I think it's a detriment to the environment. I don't think as stewards of the environment, we have any right to be spraying any pesticides or any gut rotting material to kill insects. I voted in favor of not cutting the sides of the roads so caterpillars could nest and support the monarch butterfly population. Really why this is on the agenda is I wanted it here for an open discussion. And like our mayor said, there was a great presentation just put forward, but we owe it to our constituents to let them know how we feel and what we're going to do, either support the spraying or not support the aerial spraying. We've already had conversations on this, but I think a resolution at this point in time gives our constituents a concrete answer of the way our council feels. And that's the reason this was brought in as new business.
Okay, so for clarification, I think that there's three alternatives. I mean, one is that this council's already decided that the municipality itself will not spray. If anybody wants that changed, now's the time to bring it up, but that decision had been made. The second thing is that we had already decided to do a bit of an education program, making people aware of what has to be taken into account if they want to contemplate controlling the caterpillar. But then the third possibility is that we pass a bylaw saying that no aerial spraying would be allowed by anyone in the township. In other words, we're not talking about the township doing the spraying, but the possibility of saying that we won't allow aerial spraying within our township. So given that range, I'll start with Councillor Cooper and let everyone comment on how they feel we should go. Councillor Cooper.
I would just like to find out from either Elizabeth, Brian, or anybody in this virtual room how we enforce the third option. Thank you.
Well, I think I might address that just from a personal standpoint, Councillor Cooper. Enforcement is not always about writing tickets and collecting fines. Enforcement is an information highway as well too. And I think if we did have a bylaw that said that no private contractors, or there'd be no aerial spraying, that way if somebody did conduct aerial spraying, we would have a bylaw in place with some teeth that we could challenge it and try to stop this practice from continuing. I think it's been said many times over our terms of council that if you don't have something in place, you have no teeth and you have no way of controlling what people do. So I think a bylaw that eliminates or doesn't allow aerial spraying gives us something that we can use to stop this practice.
Councillor Jarvis.
I'm in agreement with Councillor Bochek, I think, and just to add to it, I think any contractor that's in the business of aerial spraying, when they see there's a bylaw in place, would certainly be discouraged from doing it because they don't want to be labeled as doing things illegally. It wouldn't be good for their business ultimately anyway. So I think that would be a good reason for having that type of bylaw in place.
Councillor Hazelton, I believe I saw your hand.
Yeah, I think that we want to be very careful here in how we proceed. The township has danced around this topic of controlling pesticides and other things over the past. In 2019, once again, it was brought forward to have staff look at things. But what was important that time is that council was reminded that in 2009, the Ontario Pesticide Act was enacted. The province of Ontario has full control over all aspects of pesticide use, licensing, etc. And at that time, actually before that, the township repealed the previous pesticide law that we had in place because we realized we had no jurisdiction on this matter. So I think we want to be very careful about anything we do today and get very accurate legal advice on what we can as a township do and what we can't. So that's kind of the factual side of things. There's probably a lot of misunderstanding in this whole aerial spraying concept. Years ago, 20 years ago, it was done by airplanes flying around, and as Elizabeth pointed out, there's probably a lot of risk in the potential drift of spray going from property to property. I believe there's only 2 licensed operators today who can spray aerial spraying. They're both highly licensed and controlled by the ministry. They use helicopters and not airplanes. They have a very well-structured plan that allows them to spray one property and ensure that there is no drift onto the neighboring property. And they are controlled under their legislation and licensing to ensure that they prevent that drift. And I'm not an expert on how they do that. That's not my interest. My only interest is there is devastation in our township in all areas, well, mostly in wards 4 and 3. There are probably over 1,000 properties in Ward 3 who have expressed interest and signed up for aerial spraying. The process that has started is a formal process with an Ontario licensed regulator to have them contact individual property owners and establish a relationship. It has nothing to do with any group organization or the township or anything like that. It's all a one-to-one relationship, the individual landowner and the aerial spraying company. And that process is well underway. including fees already having been paid by many people to conduct the aerial spraying program in the new year. So I think we want to be aware of where we are in this process. We have a situation where it's a provincially licensed matter. We had to step aside. We don't have jurisdiction on this, and if we think we do, we need to get legal counsel to help us understand where that kicks in. And we have an enormous number of residents in our township who feel so strongly about the damage from the gypsy moth, not just not just the nuisance factor, but the damage and all the cascading implications of the damage of foliage loss, etc. And so, although I appreciate Elizabeth's report, I'd have to offer that there are other opinions. And I think that if we were to make any decisions, we need to get the whole story and not just kind of the proponent story as we think about any actions we might want to take here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rienko.
I think if the majority of residents were watching us over the next couple of days and what this council is doing to impact their enjoyment of their property. Today, we're talking about preventing spraying of gypsy moths. I think tomorrow we're talking about eliminating fireworks, except for a few times during the year. I think people are going to be upset. We have properties up here worth millions of dollars. And I think that, you know, people should have the option of spraying or not spraying, depending on what their feelings are. If you want to know what your property is going to look like in about June or July, just look outside now and probably subtract half of the pine trees. And that's what it's going to be looking like here in July if people aren't allowed to spray their property. 98 or 95% of the land in our township is forested. And what will happen if we do some gypsy moth spraying this year, we may end up spraying probably less than 1% of that land within our township. And I can't support the idea that, you know, we're going to prevent people from spraying gypsy moths. I lived through back in the 80s or 90s when we had the big situation up here. It was devastating to all our properties. We lost a lot of trees as a result of not getting onto the spraying program early enough. And a lot of our pine trees and so on, especially along the shore where there's not a lot of roots into the ground and so on, and they're already being stressed. I think people are going to be losing trees on their property. And I think to be very, very upset with the township if we pass this regulation. So I can't support it. I know that there's not a lot of people doing spraying around here, but I think they should be allowed to go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Ms. Louder.
I'm concerned. Like, I understand that it was devastating to the trees, but they did bounce back and grow back. And last year was a very weird spring. It was very dry. Normally we don't have forest fires until July and August when it's really hot, and we were having forest fires in May, April. We had a forest fire. So those conditions really produced more moths because the bacteria that's naturally found in soil, the BTK, it sporulates and grows with moisture. So the lack of moisture produced more. So my concern is if we go ahead and say, let's spray, and hey, there's no caterpillars this year, yay. But actually we got a lot of rain. I'm also concerned that we are a bee city. We would have to revoke that if we were to spray a mass spraying program. And also, if we're on the biosphere and the biosphere is recommending not near waterways, how that would be controlled.
Councillor Jarvis, we'll do a second round here and then we'll have to decide what sort of resolution we're going to create.
In support of Ms. Louder's comments, everybody should understand that BTK is naturally around in the environment, and yeah, it is moisture that helps it propagate. So that's an interesting point. Also, we also got to keep in mind that trees and all plants have to be pollinated, and if you don't have pollinators, you may think you're losing the trees because of the LLD moth, but in the end, you may end up losing a lot more than that if you spray and remove a significant portion of the pollinators from the environment. I'm not keen on this at all. And I think we've all got to understand, another thing we've got to understand is people are spending more time with their cottages or full-time residences now because of the COVID pandemic. They're seeing the devastation brought on by the LLD moth more than they would have in the past. This moth's been around for a little while. Keep in mind, it was introduced to North America by human beings who brought it over with other intents in mind, and it got away, similar to Asian carp in the Mississippi. And I mean, we're the cause of our own problems right now, and I don't think a short-term solution, which is what this is going to give us anything other than, you know, short-term satisfaction and maybe some long-term damage that we aren't even fully aware of. So I really, really am against this for those reasons. Thank you.
Commissioner, did you want to add a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning. I just wanted to comment about the jurisdiction concern. And I think when we are looking to council, we're looking for leadership as well. And it's a good opportunity for us is to dedicate a significant amount of time toward educating people about the consequences of aerial spraying, be it helicopter or airplane, as well as what Elizabeth has identified with respect to that BTK is in the soil. And there may be solutions that residents can take to encourage the propagation of the BTK that is natural in the environment, but also in terms of a better understanding of what we can do earlier in the calendar year to be able to discourage the caterpillars from getting up into trees. I hear, Elizabeth, that she's not suggesting that homeowners can't individually spray trees, for example, in properties where there are less, more specific trees, perhaps in gardening and landscaping that can be sprayed with a spray bottle. I don't think Elizabeth is against that because it's very specialized, but I think the conversation is an aerial spray program. So I'm just suggesting to council that maybe we look at it as a leadership role and really dedicate some time in the newsletters so that we can, and through our social media and our other communications, so that we can provide timely information to help our residents really understand what was happening. I think last year we were a little bit behind because we were catching up to what we were seeing. And if we could be, use our calendar as an advantage, we might be able to get some conversations started about the consequences of spraying, aerial spraying earlier in the discussion of the year. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just for round two here, I wanted to say that it would be very hypocritical of me to be put in my position on council running on a platform where the environment is number one, which is what I ran on. And for me to endorse something that's going to damage the environment, in my belief, damage it more than it'll help it. It'd be irresponsible of me and it'd be hypocritical of me to say, go ahead and allow the spraying when I fully believe we should not be impacting the environment in any negative way. Thank you.
I'm going to add a couple of comments of my own, if I may. I'm not in favor of aerial spraying myself, but I think there's two things. One is, considering the BTK is in our soils, seems to me if we have a really dry spring, then the thing to do is to spray with water. And maybe not only will our trees appreciate that because the roots are drying out, but that might inspire more of the BTK to grow in the soil that they then can get to the caterpillars. But I do think Councillor Hazelton brought up an important point that might be, which would be my suggestion, and that is not pass a resolution. If you were contemplating passing a resolution banning aerial spraying, we might want to ask staff to look into it and bring that forward next month, because I don't know where we would stand in regards to jurisdiction with the province. And I think that would be important to know before we actually contemplate something like banning aerial spraying, if it turns out we actually don't have the authority. And I'm saying that, not suggesting that that is what council will eventually decide, but if it wants to contemplate that, I think we should confirm our authority. Councillor Cooper.
Well, thank you for your comments, Mayor, and I concur with you actually. And I also wanted to, just to be clear, we need to find out if it's our jurisdiction as far as I'm concerned. The other point I'd make, and which was a very good one, is the educational aspect. And I think we should be making an effort to get the story out there, so to speak, and well in advance of the next season. So and that was sort of the suggestion, I think, that came from Jennifer Sneer. So that I would encourage that. Thank you.
Councillor Yanko.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think you brought up a good point about our legitimacy to pass bylaws against spraying. I remember earlier in one of my terms, Hydro One came to us with every so often they come along and spray their power lines through our townships, and they ask us, could they do it in our township or not? And pretty well all the time we say no. However, they can still do it. They can ask us they don't need our permission to do it, but they ask our opinion. So I know they did spray some areas and so on, but I think their jurisdiction comes from the province and not from ourselves. On the BTK, my understanding is that it's very water soluble. They have to spray when it's dry, early in the morning when there is very little wind, so it doesn't blow off the various properties. And come the first rain, all that stuff washes off and we're back to a normal situation. So we're probably talking about a few days, maybe a week, where the BT is on the leaves and the gypsy moths are actively eating it and so on. But once the rain comes, then that disappears. And that's why quite often, depending on the weather situation, the planes might have to come back for a second spraying because the pesticide wasn't on the leaves long enough to do any major damage to the caterpillar. So I think it's a short-lived situation, probably less than a week. And so I'm not overly concerned about the population of insects and butterflies and so on, because they have the rest of the season to work.
Ms. Louder.
Just in response to that, I know it's easy to think that things just disappear, but that's the thing, it goes into our waterways. Those 2 days, my whole population of honeybees will have pollinated and already brought the pesticide back into the hive. And it is only 48 hours it lasts on the leaves, but that has a big effect on the pollinators. They don't just chill in their hives. I'm not going to lock them in there for 2 days while they're spraying. You have to let them out, so they're going to come in contact with it.
All right. I think we've had quite a bit of discussion around this. And I know that we've already in the past given staff direction to on the education side of things. And Ms. Way has drafted a potential resolution, which I'll read to you now for to see whether or not we want to call the vote on this one. And that is, be it resolved that council directs staff to report back regarding the authority to ban aerial spraying and regulation of pesticides and the impacts to all pollinators. And I would suggest it would be moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Any further discussion? Councillor Hazelton? You're muted, Councillor Hazelton. Councillor Hazelton, you are muted.
Sorry, I was trying to kill myself on my other phone here. My concern with any matter we talk about here at council is that we get the full story. And I do appreciate that we have a lot of information that has been provided that presents one side of the story. I think that before we try to make a decision, none of us are experts. We don't have any of us who are what we'll call active proponents of spraying, only facilitators, if you will. And I think that if we're asking staff to go away and investigate, perhaps we should also be asking staff to bring forward a strong proponent of and supporter of spraying programs to give us what I'll call a balanced perspective of the overall outcome. And then we'll be in a better position to be able to make decisions.
Well, at this point, we're simply asking staff to get more information about whether we even have the authority.
Yeah, I think there was the last clause implied something more than that. Could you put it back up on the screen perhaps so we can see it? And so you got regulations, and then the last statement was impact to all pollinators. And I think that's an area that we might find different perspectives. For example, I'm certain that the spraying company would tell us that because of their regulated and controlled environment and their mandates to not allow drift of BTK over onto properties that do not want it, and for them to be able to have an inventory of properties that want it and don't want it, so that they can and do control the impacts of drift. And that's what I've heard, but I'm not the expert. I think we should have kind of that expert perspective provided to us so that we can make a balanced decision.
Well, I think by asking for the impacts to all pollinators, that would ask staff to find out what that is. And obviously there'll be two sides to that story.
Okay.
Ms. Louder, you want to add something?
Sorry, just in response to that, when I was creating my presentation, I did reach out to Councillor Hazelton, just asking for more information about who was organizing in the spray company. I am an educator and I'm a lifelong learner and like to know both sides of everything. And I wasn't able to get that information, but I would have gladly included it in my presentation if I had it.
All right, I think at this point, council, we should simply make the decision whether or not we want staff to report back with a little more information. So any further discussion? Then I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. And thank you very much, Ms. Louder, for your presentation. And thank you, council, for all your input on this. And we will move on to another topic. Thank you very much. Okay. Next on our list is the consent agenda. And I'll say moved by Councillor Wienko and seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that council adopts the consent agenda of December 13th, 2021 as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried. That means I can go past a fair number of resolutions here. Okay. Thank you very much. And now we're down to communications from everyone. And I'm going to start with Councillor Bocek because I don't think he did this last month. So he can now tell us 2 months worth of stories if he's so inclined. No, you don't have 2 months to do it. Let's make that clear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a whole lot to report. Obviously, the same amount of interaction with my constituents to do with things like the gypsy moths coming up this spring, about water levels, about quite a bit of interest this month about our drinking water protected area south of Lock 45 or on the Georgian Bay side. We'll get into that in another month. I'll be bringing something forward about that. But the main thing this month was getting out to the Baxter Ward Community Center for 2 reasons. One was to help out the Rotary Club. They put on a poinsettia sale to raise funds for them and do their cash in hand. And the other one was the Santa Claus Parade, which was at the community center. The mayor and I both attended, and boy, the kids sure had a lot of fun. Nice to see everybody come out and enjoy themselves. Even during the pandemic, it wasn't certainly what we've had in years past, but it was enjoyable. So thanks to all the volunteers and all the organizers for a great day. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Fitzgerald. And just have a few things to comment on. And up to, been a busy time. No, of course, there's always the
Councillor Cooper, we're having trouble hearing you.
You can't hear me now?
Now we can. I think it was when you turned your head that you became more muffled or something. Sorry.
Oh, well, there we go. I'm just trying to read something here, but I'll try and move it. How's that? Okay, so I'll try and move this over so I can see it. But you know, the usual, meaning the various council meetings at the district and so on since our last last council meeting, but also quite a bit of activity with respect to working with the consultant that we've hired to take a look at the feasibility of the education center. So that sort of kept me running a bit, and also trying, there's been some media interest in it as well. I guess the other thing I would say is that there's been a lot of back and forth with various constituents with respect to planning matters, OMB appeals, or sorry, OLT appeals, etc. So that's sort of a never-ending story. I guess the only other thing that one thing I did attend was a webinar that was put on by the Georgian Bay Association, along with Georgian Bay Forever, on the 4th of December, which was quite interesting. And one of the main topics was septic systems and their impact on the environment and how they work, and a lot of different information coming forward, which was, I think, helpful, although some of the information was, as you might expect, related to where there's a ton of soil, which we don't have. And so you see systems and drawings and so forth that come from, I think one was from Michigan, if I remember correctly, and it was, you know, indicating water tables and things like that. We have a water table, it's just out in front of our place, so to speak. And so I think it was interesting. And the other thing I noted, kind of thought it was a bit strange that our current environmental consultant, who's based out of Bracebridge, indicated that the setback for septic systems was 15 meters, which I found rather odd, given that in the district of Muskoka, it's 30 meters. So I think we need to make sure that our environmental consultant is better informed. And you know, it's unfortunate, but I think it's important to acknowledge that those are not those are not our set of standards. At 15 meters, it's 30. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Sorry, just wrestling with things here. So I had the opportunity to, not from a township standpoint, but go south and enjoy some time in Atlanta. Sadly, I've picked up the grandchildren cold, and I was lucky to get across the border back into Canada. But the good news is no COVID, so that's a good thing. But I was able to do a lot of things remotely. One thing that we probably all want to be aware of is if you travel to the States, you're now going to have to tell IT that you're traveling to the States, because I got a surprise halfway through my stay down there that my system just stopped working. And it took a couple of IT guys before they realized, oh yeah, we made a change. We cut you off. We didn't tell you about it, which is kind of odd. But anyways, so you'll all have to be aware of that if you travel. But I had many calls and emails in spite of the fact of being remote. A lot of them regarding the LD moth situation, and continuing to have more and more residents want to find out ways of how they can get involved with an aerial spraying program. I think from my perspective, the key thing here is everybody's had a lot of self-education. And if they get to a point where they believe that the aerial spraying program is the right program, then that's their opinion. I'm not trying to influence it. Had a lot of discussions around that pending matter up in Wauwatosa. Apparently, the community up there continues to be very, very concerned about things, and we'll see how that plays out. And of course, lots of other planning matters. It seems that people want to call their local counselor and talk about planning related concerns. And then, as you know, I'm on the library board. We had lots of library board meetings this month as we have had to go through a new CEO recruiting process. And that seems to be progressing well, and hopefully we'll have something that can be reported in the next month. But lots of discussions, several interviews, and more discussions. And as I say, I hope that we have something positive to report in the next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I too was part of those, a number of those library board meetings. And just thinking, since we do have a library system and specifically aimed at our director of sustainability, the library would be a good place to probably disseminate significant amount of information with regards to the LLD moth, amongst a bunch of other stuff that we should be getting out to people. So that's something should be considered. Other than that, committee of adjustment, and then I am currently in the, I signed up for that reconciliation education put on by the Indigenous community, and am finding that a worthwhile program to participate in. I'm sure there are others that are doing it, but I recommend it. It can take up a bit of time, but it's interesting to be better educated about that community and their history with us settlers. Other than that, the usual stuff again from constituents, but a little more these days. LLD planning matters, as Councillor Hazelton alluded to, are definitely top of people's mind this time of year. I don't know why it should be Christmas, but anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Wienko.
Thank you. A couple of things. I had a couple of committee meetings with the district on the waste management topic, and possibly during the committee of the whole, I wouldn't mind adding a topic just to bring everybody up to speed on the waste management issue as it moves forward at the district. I know a couple of the mayor and Councillor Cooper sat in on the last one, but there is other information I want to provide tomorrow. So I'll add that to a topic tomorrow. I also had 2 meetings of the SSEA, both board meetings, actually, and executive meeting. So I was fairly busy with that group this year, basically on the budget and also on we have a quarterly meeting of the board. So I had that also. Cynthia and I attended the Santa Claus parade up in MacTier. It was basically the same as in previous years, and it was well attended on the street.
That's an hour wait on a time, so get.
Counselor, oh, he caught himself. Sorry about that.
Okay. And I also found time to get my COVID booster, so I'm feeling really good these days about that. The other issue that we should be aware of, which may not affect our township per se, but there is a big petition being gathered on the Gibson Lake, kind of north end of 6 Mile Lake, concerning these ATV and mud trucks that are destroying the trails up in our area. And we talked about the parking issue at the last meeting, but there is a petition going, working with Norm Miller and so on at the province, trying to get some kind of control on these trucks and ATVs. And basically this petition is saying, and I didn't really know this, but they're in here almost every weekend. And maybe Tony knows a bit more about the schedule and so on, but they have been doing quite a bit of damage and so on. So I would be cognizant that this petition is going forward. I don't know if the township wants to get involved with it or not, but that's something that's going forward. And that's it.
I see Miss King. Do you have any information to add to that?
No, I wasn't aware of the petition, but I do speak to the residents quite regularly at the end of the road where there is no parking signs. So I was aware that they are in there quite often in the Gibson River Provincial Park. So it's more that area that I'm aware that the trails are being damaged. So I do know that, but I wasn't aware of the petition. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just on that situation, and Mr. Mayor, you may want to get involved too, is that they're going to get the local bands involved with this petition too, because it is it's called a preserve, not a reserve, but a preserve. And I think the Water Mohawk may want to get involved in that petition because it's destroying their roads, the trails through their lands.
Hey, thank you. I had quite a busy month. It started on November 11th. Councillor Douglas and I were up in MacTier at the Remembrance Day service that they had there, and I thought that was a very effective service. November 12th, attended a Royal Victoria Hospital, that's the Barrie Hospital, annual update for elected officials, and their biggest conversation, I'd say, would be around they want to create a South Campus in Barrie to better serve the area. On November 13th and again on December 4th, attended the GBA H2O conference that Councillor Cooper made reference to, and I found them quite informative. What I don't even recognize, I can't even read my writing on what I did on the 15th, but anyway, that was also district meetings then. And I had meetings on the 16th with regard around to wetlands support, and I had my Biosphere and Land Trust board meetings on the 17th with the health unit and the finance committee. Of course, we had planning committee on the 22nd. The 23rd, Jessica basically ruined my life with our meeting that you all know about now. And I exaggerate, of course, but that was not one of my good days. But that was also when we had our budget open house. And I will admit that I'm a little disappointed. We went through all that whole budget open house and only had one member of the public attend. But hopefully in the future, we'll have more to get more input. Though I really appreciate the input we received from that member of the public. And the 24th, Lake Huron Georgian Bay Framework meeting I attended. This is basically about shorefront management all around the Great Lakes, and I found that quite interesting. The 29th, of course, was the Honey Harbor Community Advisory Group meeting. Santa Claus Parade in Port Severn, as Councillor Bocek made reference to. Quite enjoyed that day. I think that's it. Lots, as I think it was Councillor Jarvis pointed out, lots of people talking about planning issues in the past month, even though you'd think that people would be getting ready for Christmas, but I think actually people are getting ready for next year, and they're thinking about what they want to do next year. And you know, I heard lots of opinions, good and bad. And I guess the greatest thing I've heard about in the last couple of days is the windstorms and the effect it's had on the waterfront areas off of Georgian Bay, because number of trees down and certainly lots of people losing power. But that weather sometimes come, and you know, thank goodness we weren't Kentucky. Okay. Madam CAO, your turn, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I do apologize for ruining your life. And
well, that was an exaggeration, but it was a disappointment.
So for everyone on this call is fully aware, but my last day at the township will be January 14th. And I have accepted the position as CAO at the Township of Ramera. So I will miss everyone's smiling face, and I'll be sure to tune in anyways, just to make sure everyone's still on their game. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the fact that our fire chief sent me a note regarding Tay Township is doing fundraising for an airboat for their fire department, and they are approaching Georgian Bay cottage associations to contribute to that. So there's a bit of a concern that they will think that if they contribute to a purchase of another township's boat, then this boat is going to be coming out to save them, but it's not in their jurisdiction. So the fire chief just wanted me to fill you in on that, and consider the fact that maybe down the road one should be purchased.
If I understood it correctly, Madam CEO, that they intended to have one of those agreements with surrounding municipalities in regards to this boat that can, it's a high-speed hovercraft basically, that they came up because they want to be able to rescue some of the people who in the past have had snowmobile incidences, for instance, going through the ice, and they're certainly presenting themselves as being able to serve a number of municipalities in around the whole southern Georgian Bay area, and including our township. So Chief Van Dam, perhaps you can comment on that.
You're absolutely correct, Your Worship. That's what they're proposing. However, I've had discussions with the fire chief from Tay Township. It started off that they went to the Severn River Cottage Association, and that was put towards, after my conversation with the fire chief there, he wouldn't guarantee that they were going to be able to go up into that Severn River. It was into the Gloucester Pool area was the discussion. And I said, okay, you can't be asking these people to contribute to a fundraiser with that you're saying you're going to do it unless there is some kind of a guarantee that you are going to respond to that. And when we had a little bit of discussion, and the fire chief from Tay Township and myself have another meeting scheduled to talk about it, by the time they bring that boat up to, say, Big Chute to launch into that area, the chances of any type of rescue are going to be lost at that point. And it's the same thing now. We were informed last week that they were speaking to the cottage associations in Cognisheen and in Honey Harbor. And there's been no details worked out between myself and the fire chief whether it's an opportunity for us to get on board with that. So there's a bit of a disconnect that we have a fundraising committee that's trying to raise the funds, and then the municipalities themselves need to have conversation to see whether that is feasible or not. So it boils down to, does this council wish for me to engage with that fire chief and potentially come to see if there is an opportunity? Or is it something that this township feels that at some point they're going to have to look at it themselves? You have over 3,000 structures out in the Georgian Bay area that are paying tax assessments, and there's no guarantee when that boat's not owned by yourselves whether you can respond or not. So just a couple things to keep in mind. But the goal of it is to advise you, because there is conversation going on out there, and they are seeking funding from, I'm going to say, local residents.
All right, we're hijacking this a little bit, but I think we should complete the conversation. And Councillor Cooper, you want to add to it?
Yeah, simply from an informational perspective, I can certainly say in the Ward 2 area in particular, but I think even in Ward 4, there are quite a few hovercrafts available. And in fact, some of them perform rescues anyway. So I think we should be aware of the equipment that's out in that area. It doesn't cover, obviously, Wards 3 and 1, but certainly 4 and 2 have that sort of availability, and I think it wouldn't hurt to sort of connect with those owners and of that equipment and see if we can arrange some sort of make some sort of arrangement with the operators of those, I'll call them vessels. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Tony, for bringing us up to speed on this. I think the real key point is here that if they're out doing fundraising and they're saying they're going to offer the service within that area, we got to make sure that's true. I donated to the fund myself because I have family that live in Victoria Harbor and Port McNichol area, and I wanted to help them out. So if they're coming up here saying we're looking for funding because we're going to be able to help support you up here, that's a different story. So I don't discourage anyone from giving money to the fundraiser, but it sure be nice to have clarity on whether we're going to get use of that service or not. So thank you for that, Tony.
Chief Undone.
Just final thing, Councillor Cooper, we are working with our local contractors. That's what we have done in the past for getting vessels and stuff out there. I can tell you that we're averaging in the wintertime, we're using boats or vessels in the winter with hovercrafts and so forth. We're averaging about 7 times a year.
All right, thank you very much. Just for everybody's information, and then we'll get handed back to CEO Gunby, who's been very patient. The fundraising group did approach me as mayor, and I've asked them to send me more information. All I've got is a postcard right now, but they were going to send me more information. At that point, I had planned on talking to our chief and our council in this regard, and so we'll see what comes from that. CEO Gunby, back to you. Anything else you wanted to add? And I think I appreciate your indulgence.
No problem. There is nothing else that I wanted to add, and I'm glad that council was able to have that conversation with our fire chief.
Thank you. Well, folks, let's start the staff reports section of our agenda. And the first thing I have here is vaccine policy. And
yes. Just bring it up here.
Madam CAO.
Thank you for that. So as you'll see in your agenda, I revised the draft policy I brought forward to the last meeting to support the request from members of council that the policy applies to all of those who enter into our facilities, whether they're coming to pick up a permit or they're employed there or they are a committee member meeting in council chambers when our offices do open up. So I have changed that to include everyone who uses the facilities. And the dates are still highlighted because we're still not sure when the office is going to open. So we don't have set dates for that. So those will change if adopted once we find out or once we determine when the office will open again to the public. And the other highlighted thing is it states that the two rapid tests will be at the cost of the employee who does not follow the vaccination policy. And I just was not sure if council wanted to leave that as the employee would pay the $80 a week, or if the township would pay that for them.
Council, any suggestions to offer to CEO Gunby? Councillor, okay, I've seen hands quickly, and I think I saw it in the order of Jarvis, Bocheck, Wienkel. So let's go in that order.
Thank you. I'm very much in favor of maintaining what's in place. And I use as an example what happened at, we can institute that at all in the township, but they offered to pay for employees testing, but for those that were vaccinated, they offered $1 increase per hour to counter the cost that they would be incurring to have their employees that were not vaccinated tested. So I don't know if we can have something like that to encourage people to be vaccinated, but I think what we should be doing is doing everything to encourage people to be vaccinated. And if they're paying $80 a week, if that's correct, for the testing, then maybe getting a vaccine is a better option for them. So I'm very much in favor of maintaining what's in place. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bocheck, followed by Councillor Wienkel.
Yeah, thank you. I read it over quite thoroughly, and I think what we have in place is a good policy. I was just wondering, Jessica, the plans for the city of Toronto to reopen are scheduled for January, and I was just wondering if you had any opportunity to look at their policies to do with vaccine, or any of the townships or cities that are considering reopening in January, if you did a little bit of a comparison between what our policy is and what their policy is.
I didn't do the comparison based on who planned on being open next month. And when I stated at a previous meeting that we were hoping to open in the new year, but then Councillor Hazelton pointed out that typically 2 weeks after a large gathering, you don't really know what the numbers would be like. So it's sort of up in the air right now. So February at the earliest. And it's hard to say what policy is sort of correct. There's so many different policies out there. People can choose not to have a policy. They can have one that says you must be vaccinated or we will terminate your employment. There's some that just say if you're vaccinated, great. If not, so there's a lot of different vaccine policies. And while a lot of staff are not in favor of the policy, I think the way that this one is written would be best for the township.
Just supplementary to that, my only concern in reading your report was with the fire department. And these volunteer firefighters make very, very little in the way of compensation for what they do. And to hit them up with an $80 charge for something they're doing basically on a volunteer basis may be a little harsh. And the numbers, I was surprised, are not what I thought they would be for vaccinated individuals on the fire department. So I don't know if in the future we're going to have to look at that portion of it and maybe make some changes to that, because we certainly don't want to lose recruits. We don't want to lose our firefighters, because the neighboring township may have a different policy. They don't have to pay the $80 and they'll run over there. So everything, the way it's written is good, but my only concern is with the volunteer firefighters, the cost to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wienkel.
I like the way the policy is now written, that employees aren't allowed into facilities unless they're double vaccinated. But I'm just curious, it says 81% of the volunteer firefighters, well, who responded anyway, are vaccinated. And I'd like to get some response from Tony on this as to what he feels like. Obviously, he and his people are going to be exposed to unvaccinated individuals, even though they're tested and so on. I'd like to get his feelings on that, first of all. And you talked about 90% of all of our employees are vaccinated. Well, those last 10%, you're saying they're not allowed any of our facilities. So maybe you can explain how these individuals can operate in the township without going into any of our buildings. And again, I assume most of these people are outside employees, in other words, in operations, and I wouldn't mind getting a feedback from Brad, what his feelings are, because again, his staff, himself and his staff are going to be exposed to these people. So I like the idea that, you know, the township office is now what's somewhat sealed up on that issue, and I'd be much more comfortable going into that office now. But I'm just wondering about these other individuals, senior management, what they feel about having some of their employees unvaccinated and being exposed to it.
If I can just clarify, Your Worship, that the policy
Please.
does not state that if you're unvaccinated, you cannot enter as an employee, but it states that if you're not vaccinated, you do have to then pay for 2 rapid tests a week to prove that you do not have COVID as you're coming into the building. So in no way does this translate to if you're not vaccinated, we have to lay you off. So there's no issue for job security when it comes to this policy, but I'll let Brad and Tony answer your other questions.
Mr. Sokash.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can.
I have discussed this with, right now it's our arena staff that have been dealing with the public for the most part. And we have one staff member in particular that's been at the arena most of the time. And he, to date, has been comfortable with the way things have been handled by the township and dealing with the public. So at this time, he seems fine. And if he is comfortable with it, then I'm comfortable with it as well.
Chief Undum.
So with the volunteer firefighters, we are quite confident where any contact that we have with an employee, with the member of a public doing a medical response or whatever, we have protocols in place that should be following and protecting our staff. We've had, we're down to, I believe, 6 people now who are not vaccinated, not likely to get vaccinated anytime soon. And we're managing that. We try to, if it's all possible, we keep them out of that risk that they'll come in contact with somebody. And then we're managing anybody who has any close contacts. We're following the public health unit and we manage it that way. But there is no discrepancy here with COVID in that we have seen a difference of change in our response and how we have to do it.
All right, thank you. Councilor Yanko, follow up?
Just to follow up then, okay, so that handles basically the outside staff and also the firefighters. What about the office? So the way I read it is that no one's allowed into the township office that isn't vaccinated. Are there unvaccinated people in the township office?
I'm not aware because it was an anonymous survey, but the policy applies to everyone coming in. So if you, I'd say to pick up a building permit, if you're not vaccinated, you would have to then send someone else in. We're not going to make you do it. We're not going to make you pay $40, I don't think, for a rapid test outside. Or we can arrange to have someone drop it off outside, something like that. When it comes to staff, the policy is written in the way that if you do not let us know that you're vaccinated, you will then have to show us 2 negative rapid tests per week at their cost. They can still come in the office. They're just not vaccinated.
Councilor Wojcik.
Thank you for allowing my second question. I didn't read anywhere in the report, Jessica, on new hires, the status, vaccination status of new hires. Would you considering hiring anyone that wasn't double vaccinated or had proof of double vaccination?
Yes, definitely. And the policy would apply to them too, where they would also have to, it would be in the job posting, I would assume, that you have to comply with this policy if you were hired, which would be if you're not vaccinated, you have to pay for your own 2 tests per week.
Okay, thank you.
I have moved by Councilor Wojcik, second by Councilor Cooper, Be it resolved that council adopts the vaccine policy to take effect when all township facilities open up to the public. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Information Technology Services Delivery Strategy, Financial IT Services Department 2021-37. Madam Boutier, I believe that is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to defer this one to Nathan Fisher, which is our Business Systems and Data Technical Assistant.
All right. Mr. Fisher, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I
Sorry.
think this is your first time in front of council, is it not?
Yes, it is. So I apologize if I miss any kind of formalities by accident.
Well, that's fine, but your first formality has to be a 1 or 2 sentence introduction to yourself for council's benefit, please.
Okay. I'm Nathan Fisher. I'm the Business Systems and Data Technical Assistant with the Township of Georgian Bay.
I think that'll probably cover it for now. Go ahead, please.
Okay. All right. So the township has 3 options we are looking at for information systems technology service delivery. There is the option of an in-house department, a new managed service provider, district, or the District of Muskoka partnership. Each option has its own benefits and challenges to meet the township needs, and the township has previously attempted all 3 options with mixed results. We recently issued an RFP for a managed IT service provider, and Nova Networks has been selected as the successful bidder. Given the township's current priorities and current positioning, our recommendation is that council directs staff to enter an agreement with Nova Networks as our full service managed information technology service provider, as well as continue allocating 0.5 of the business systems and data technical assistant position to continue as an on-site presence to enhance the information technology service delivery. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them regarding this.
All right, thank you. Councilor Cooper.
Nathan, and I was going to ask you anyway, from your introduction, I sort of read that you were, through your introduction, an employee, but in fact, you're a consultant. Is that correct? Which is it?
Oh, thank you. No, I am an employee of the township.
So the service, you would be sort of supervising this service, is that correct?
That is correct. I'm assisting and facilitating to make sure that the work is being done and also being the presence to staff to interact with.
Thank you for the clarification.
Anyone else? Councilor Hazelton.
I think what we've heard is an effective strategy. I would also like to just go out of my way to thank Nathan for stepping in. It appears that the tech support group that we have or had dismissed the fact that I was blocked from email. And it wasn't until Nathan got involved and told the guys that I had a problem and that somebody needed to look at it, that action actually started to take place. So thank you very much, Nathan. But it's that kind of role that we need here, but we also need to have an effective group that somebody is managing and directing. And I think this is a good step.
Councilor Jarvis.
I, for one, appreciate having a body that we have can have contact with when we have issues, even if they can't be resolved right away. At least we know somebody's there that we can talk to about it. I noticed under the in the key strengths and weaknesses chart, Nathan, one of the weaknesses for the Nova was when on-site services required next business day as a resolution timeline. I don't see that as a weakness. Is that as opposed to the next hour, or how is that perceived as a weakness?
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the idea is that if we had relative to other services like an in-house provider, where we had an in-house administrator, the administrator would likely be able to resolve it in under a day. Whereas if we have a problem now that cannot be solved remotely, the fastest time usually is to coordinate that service would be the following business day. With everything being remote these days, our servers are remote, almost everything can be managed remote. So it's like a smaller weakness that should be kind of mentioned, but not one that I would call critical.
Okay, I'm just comparing it to everything else. I see your point. I think I like the idea of bringing in somebody like Nova. I think Councillor Hazelton's situation is an example of things we got to be aware of and be able to fix. And I think that if we go with the Nova solution, the idea would be to let all users know sort of what timelines are, so everybody has a clear idea, Julie and Nathan, of what to expect when they have a problem. And follow up to that is that there should be response. There should be an allowance for response time, not to somebody's inquiry. Just to even let them know it's going to take a day to get it sorted out, so that somebody knows they're being listened to.
All right, I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to enter into an agreement with Nova Networks as our full service managed information technology service provider, and that 0.5 full-time equivalent of the business systems and data technical assistant position continue to be allocated as an on-site presence to enhance information technology service delivery. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right, now we're going to go to Modernization Reserve. Ms. Boutiette, I think this one is yours.
Through your worship, I believe the next report is, oh yes, for Marmac.
Yeah.
So through your worship, Marmac is our software provider for the building department, where all the building permits are entered into. It was understood that the Town Suite software would be a replacement of Marmac. The issue here is that the costs prior to 2022 were in one type of format, which was about, I believe, $3,000 a year. It was a subscription basis. Marmac, when made aware that we were migrating to Town Suites, said they no longer wish to do a subscription basis for us moving forward because we are about to exit, and proposed a licensing for the next year at $10,000 a year. And we do still need the software for one more year, as we have not yet migrated the building department into the Town Suite software.
So did I understand you? We're going from 3,000 a year to 10,000 a year for the last year?
That's correct.
Okay. I better keep my editorial to myself. Councillor Hazelton.
Just a simple question, if I could, Julie. If you spent 10,000 on extra consulting for Town Suite, could you close the gap and get Town Suite working? Or is this the only path forward?
Through your worship to Councillor Hazelton, we have explored, being the Town Suite implementation team and the building department, have explored every other avenue, and there is no way, shape, or form that we could make this happen before the end of the year. So this is the only path forward.
Okay. Councillor Jarvis.
So basically, Julie, we're being held over a barrel on this by Mermac. Is that what it comes down to?
I'm going to let you, through your worship to Councillor Jarvis, interpret that yourself.
I think I probably put the words into the mayor's mouth on that one to a certain extent. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm afraid my wording was going to be less diplomatic. Councillor Bocek.
Julie, just for my own understanding, the Mermac program that we've been using has cost us $3,000 a year on a contract basis. And because we've decided to switch to a different program, they're saying they're not going to honor another year at 3,000. They want 10,000, trying to entice us to stay with them instead of switching over. Yeah, okay, I got it. You shook your head. That's all I need.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. And so we're on the rack at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think Ms. Boutiette would have recommended this if she thought we had a better option. All I can suggest is anybody listening or anybody you know, Marmac, don't deal with them. I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved, the council authorized the payment of $10,000 from the modernization reserve for the 2022 lease cost of Marmac building software. All those reluctantly in favor. I don't know, Ms. Way, if that's proper decorum, but I couldn't help put that extra word in. That is reluctantly carried. Okay. Budget. Should we take a break before we get into budget, or should we get it all done before 11 o'clock so we can take an 11 o'clock break? I'm seeing his nod. I don't know which one.
Go through. Keep going.
Okay, we'll keep going. And if it gets too cumbersome, we'll just break halfway through. Ms. Boutiette, you have the final budget in front of us for our, the resolution is very simple. Be it resolved, the council approves the 2022 budget as presented. So I don't know if you want to make any words of introduction, and then we'll see whether council wants to discuss it. It has been discussed a few times in the past, we know. Ms. Boutiette,
Yes.
over to you.
Through your worship, just a little piece of information that was not specifically detailed in the budget bylaw. However, it is known to council. We are looking at balancing the budget with the sale of properties in the sum of $678,000.
Okay, but do you want us to approve the budget, and then if that sale succeeds, that will balance, or have you already got that in there?
It's in there as
Okay.
a gain on sale of land. Should we get more, it'll be transferred to reserve. Should we get less, it'll come back to council to determine what actions are required next. And I'm not sure, Clerk Way, if this is just a presentation for passing of the bylaw later in the meeting.
Yes, I believe here we're going to approve it, and then later we'll have a resolution to formally pass the bylaw.
Correct.
Clerks do things that way for some reason. Councilor Rienko.
I thought we was going to get a report on what lands are available to sell, and we were going to pick some land to sell. Is that coming up in the future? It is it? Okay, so
Yes,
right now,
through your worship, we don't have that list available at this time, but we will be bringing it forward in the next probably February.
Councilor Bocek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Julie, a little sidebar here. Council agreed to sell off property in order to raise funds, and we sold 4 pieces of property on Lone Pine Road. Those properties, my understanding is that we did sell them, we did get a deposit, but we sold them with no closing date, or there's an open-ended closing date. And this has been going on now for, I think we approved the sale 2 years ago through this council. And here we are 2 years later looking for money to balance the budget, and these properties have not closed. And in any real estate transaction I've ever been involved in, there's always a closing date. And if it's not closed and the funds aren't transferred by that date, that property goes back up for sale again. Can you enlighten me a little bit on what's happening with these properties that council did declare surplus and we did sell, but we don't have the funds?
Ms. Way.
Certainly. So it's not true that there wasn't a closing date. There was a closing date, and then the pandemic happened, and the closing date was extended. I sent emails this morning regarding the specific closing and when those funds will be delivered to us. And I've been in contact with both their lawyer and our lawyer as well. But that's really all I can say at this point in time, considering it's an open real estate matter.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that council approve the 2022 budget as presented. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, okay. I make 4, so that's 4 out of 6, so that is carried. Okay, our next subject is Haskets Drive drainage complaint. And that's our operations and Mr. Sokash, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is as much to bring council up to speed with some things that have happened over the past several months, as I suspect some councilors will be contacted by one or more of the residents shortly. So we wanted to make sure you were up to speed with what has happened. So several months ago, we received a complaint from one of the residents regarding some drainage. It was taken by the planning bylaw officer, Cody, who's did a fantastic job with this. We ended up needing some legal advice, which we obtained, as the resident was suggesting that the water was coming as a result of a subdivision that was approved by the township, but then the stormwater plan wasn't put in place or adopted or something along those lines. The lots were subdivided prior to the township actually being in formation, and I believe prior to the district being formed, so it was actually approved by the province. There was a request made to the province for them to look through their files, and I don't believe anything was found. Same with the district. This was in the 1970s. So the drainage in part was coming from the Haskets Drive. It appears that a new culvert was installed about 5 years ago, which may be contributing to the problem, as well as some works on some adjacent properties that may be contributing to more water coming through. So we got a legal opinion, and basically our lawyers indicated that with respect to the historical need for a stormwater plan, due to the age, that has kind of expired, and if the plans don't exist anymore, there's not a lot that the township is obligated to do about it. With respect to the water that is coming onto the proponent's property, if it is coming from the township, then there is a responsibility for the township to manage the water. So what we've done is partially blocked off the culvert, the new culvert that was put in about 5 years ago. And then our solicitor opined that the remainder of it is a private dispute between private landowners. The township did obtain an engineering opinion as recommended by our solicitor with respect to the drainage, and it basically supported what our solicitor had indicated, that the new culvert on Haskett should be blocked off, and it's partially blocked off right now. We want to monitor the impact over the coming season, and if the culvert isn't needed, then we can plug it up. Other than that, their opinion was that they provided some suggestions for the private property owners to discuss, but at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to come to a resolution to the private drainage matter. So like I said earlier, I expect that some councillors will be contacted by one or more of the residents, and we just wanted to give you some background at this point. And we are not planning to take any further actions at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council, the resolution in front of me reads, be it resolved that council affirm the actions taken by staff to date regarding the drainage matter on Haskets Drive and that no further action be taken. Any questions? Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Brad, I did receive correspondence from people within the subdivision, and their main concern is that this is a subdivision within the township of Georgian Bay and the district of Muskoka. And at the time of the site plan and site plan agreement or whatever was put into place, that the drainage for these lots, which is on a plan of subdivision, was never considered or never dealt with. And here we are now. This subdivision, the reports I've got from residents is that the drainage culvert that you're speaking of has very little impact on the water that's entering and flowing through their properties. This has come to such a head where some of their cottages, the water's running underneath their cottages and rotting the wood. It's tearing up people's front lawns with these heavy storms that we've been getting lately. And their feeling is that no, the study that was done, the culvert is not the issue. It's the drainage of all these properties that they feel because it was an approved subdivision, that there should have been a plan to take care of the surface water, and there wasn't. And now they're looking to have an engineering company come in and figure out what's wrong at the township's expense and to move forward in rectifying this situation before we're in a real mess, because a lot of this water is coming off of township property, not the township roads necessarily, and not the ditches on the township roads, but the township has property there too. Some of the surface water is entering these private properties through our township properties, and the residents are very concerned. They've brought their concerns to me. I passed their letter on to council last night because I didn't see it was distributed through our staff, and I thought it was important that everybody get it today, and I hope everybody had a chance to read it. Give you a little different insight into what's happening up there as opposed to the report that we got through our operations department. Thank you.
Mr. Sokash.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Councilor Bochek, thank you for passing on that letter. I only received it this morning from someone on staff, so it's good that council has that to look at as well, because there are two sides to the story. We don't know what the drainage plan was back when the development was approved. Again, it was done by the province, not by the district or the township, and we don't have any documentation. We've obtained a legal opinion as well as an engineering opinion regarding the issue. And of course, council can direct us to do whatever, and we will do to the best of our abilities, whatever council directs us to do. But the legal and the engineering opinion were that the crossing culvert may be contributing to the problem, so we have blocked that off. And the water, the method of the water that is going on to the complainant's land isn't across township property, it's across private property, so we are not involved. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you for all that, and thank you, Brad. It does sound like it's a bit of a mess, but I do wonder why the property owners wouldn't be going after the province, since it was under the province's purview at the time, as opposed to the township. So that might be an opportunity for those property owners to seek some sort of retribution, shall we say, from the province. I'm not sure how successful they'd be with that, but it doesn't sound like we're really contributing very much to this. Thank you.
Mr. Sokash, followed by Councillor Wienko.
I'm sorry, there's one thing I should have added. In speaking to a couple of the residents, they suggested that the problem really started to become a problem about 5 years ago, which is about the time that Haskets Road was done. So that does lend a little bit of support that this culvert could be causing a problem. But again, it is partially plugged now. And if we get through the winter and the spring and it's not causing a problem having the culvert plugged, then I don't see a problem with either blocking it off permanently or removing it.
Councillor Yanko, followed by Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily comfortable with the resolution and putting the issue back on the residents. I like to keep an open mind on a potential solution here. And I guess my question to Brad is has the residents come up with a potential solution for the issue? I don't think they should be putting the whole issue on the township and say township go and solve it and fix it for us. I think there has to be some kind of a joint proposal here, and I would be open to the concept that we would assist them possibly financially or in kind resources to solve this particular problem. But is there a solution being suggested by the private landowners that we can participate in?
Mr. Sokash.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are some resolutions, some recommendations or suggestions regarding things that could be done on private property. They aren't much money, but they would need the cooperation of the residents, and I get the sense that it's not there. A couple of the suggestions from the residents for the township to address this problem would be, one, to build a stormwater pond, or secondly, to run a pipe from the, I guess, wetland area across Haskets Drive and have the water drain to the other side of the road, and there's a wetland over there. Now, I think that would be quite an expense. We'd have to tear up part of the road and probably blast a pipe across the road and then through another bit of rock in order to get to that wetland. But those are the two solutions that come to my mind with respect to the township's participation.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, just points of clarification for Brad. When Haskets Road was put in, did it effectively provide a dam to the wetland, and is that why the culvert was put in?
No, about 5 to 7 years ago, Haskets Drive was reconstructed, and it was a bit of a mishmash, but for some reason a new culvert was put in from the far side of the road that drains onto this side of the road. It appears to be a small catchment area, and the culvert wasn't there before. There wasn't apparently a need for a culvert in the past. So I don't know why it was put in. There wasn't a lot of supervision done. It was done a bit more than 5 years ago because I had just started. So I'm trying to get as little responsibility for this culvert as possible. But it is just draining a small area. I'm in agreement with the residents and the engineer. It is draining a small area, and I'd be surprised if it's contributing much, but I have seen some water going through. But I think this is a historical problem, and it perhaps it's just a coincidence that everything was fine for 30 years, and then when Haskets was rebuilt and this culvert was put in, that everything came to a head with respect to the drainage.
And I hopefully recommend that we are, as considered by Councillor Yanko, that we are keeping an open mind by doing one thing to see what the effect is on the private property owner's property, and we'll see. We take it from there, I guess, after that. So I have no problem with things continuing as they are, and I agree we should keep an open mind. But there's always the province to consider on this, as Councillor Cooper has suggested. Anyway, thanks, Brad.
Councillor Bochek, you want to make a second remark?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. So in a plan of subdivision, like where I live here in Port Severn, the water runs surfacely across everyone's property, exits across my property underneath the road over to a collection pond. Then when that fills up, it goes underneath Honey Harbor Road and flows out into Georgian Bay. What they've told me up there and what I've witnessed up there is that with the road construction and everything that's happened over time, there is no way for any of the water from Haskett's Road to get released into a collection area or into a basin. It has nowhere to go but onto these people's property. And it does, it runs like a river across these properties. So there is a problem. It's been identified as a problem. Our operations department seems to think by closing off this culvert, it's going to rectify the problem. The neighbors don't think so. And that's why I would like to see this report, presented to us, but I don't think it's the answer. And I don't think by washing our hands of it with this report, it's the end of it. And I really think that as the governing body here, the only governing body right now on this issue, I think we should stay active and involved in it. If we can find out the province is ultimately responsible and they can do something, great. But we can't leave these people hanging that there's no way for this water to be released except over top of their properties. That's just not fair. So I'll leave my comments at that, but I don't think we need this resolution to say we're putting this to bed and releasing our responsibilities. That's the wrong outcome from this report as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton.
I'll be brief. I'll echo Councillor Bocek's comments. I don't think we as a township should step aside, given that we've essentially inherited a subdivision for the province. The risks of the province doing anything, I think, are pretty slim. And I think that we need to stay in the picture. I think we as a township need to accept the fact that we've essentially inherited this. And according to what I've heard from Brad, recent road development may have exacerbated the problem. And I don't think we should step aside. I think we should stay involved and seek a way of working with the community and helping them, and perhaps doing some investment, but helping them come up with a reasonable outcome on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Based on all the comments I'm hearing, I'm going to suggest that we remove the last few words from this resolution, those words being, and that no further action be taken, and just, stay silent on that for now. I guess I have one concern about all this, and that is, water is going to drain through people's properties into the lake. I don't care where you are. Most of our residents have waterfront property, and in many of those properties, water drains from the lands behind through their property onto the lake. And that's probably been doing that for eons, well before any of us were born, let alone own any property in the area. And I don't think it's appropriate that we have to take responsibility for that natural fact. Having said that, if this is an issue that has come up in the last half dozen years or so that wasn't an issue before, then it might be, okay, what has caused that issue? And if the issue is the building of Haskett's Drive or the modifications with a culvert, then I think it's appropriate for the township to address that. And I understand that Mr. Zokash tells us they were already looking at blocking off that one culvert. And maybe to some degree there's some other change that could be made to the road to direct water back to where it naturally flowed. I don't know, but I also read in the notes and hear from Mr. Zokash that some of the private landowners may have affected that water flow on their, I'll call it, personal lanes into their cottages, and the placement of culverts or the lack of culverts may have directed water flow differently than it was before. And I'm not sure the township should have any responsibility for what people are doing on their private lands. And so I think we have to be a little careful here. I don't want to see us across the township building all sorts of ponds such as the one that Councillor Bocek described near his place, because then we could be facing billions of dollars worth of making ponds and messing around with nature. And ideally, we let nature take care of itself. And we are going to have more storms, and that means sometimes we're going to have more rain. That means sometimes our lanes or things are going to get washed out. And I think we have to adjust our own properties to somehow absorb that extra storm weather that I believe will be coming in as part of our future. That's my comment. I'm proposing that we modify the resolution, and I'm going to read it in the modified form, and that would be moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved that council affirms the actions taken by staff to date regarding the drainage matter on Haskets Drive. Councillor Wienko.
I think we should add some words saying that we would continue to monitor the situation and try to find an ultimate solution, even if we have to get involved in it financially or with work in kind and so on. But I think we should keep an open mind that we should continue to work on a ultimate solution.
Okay, and continue to monitor situation and seek ultimate solution. Something like that. Mr. Sokash.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I respectfully suggest that you add wording with respect to have a survey done of the affected properties and some of the drainage area by the township, that approximately $5,000 be allocated for this and staff be okie dokie to source a surveyor for this work.
All right.
That's kind of the logical next step anyways.
So, and continue to monitor situation and complete survey of the area.
Sorry, do you want me to type it out, Your Worship?
Sure, you type it out the way a clerk would like to see it.
Karen, the Director of Finance has asked that we identify a funding source, and I would suggest the engineering budget for operations.
Okay.
All right, so I have moved by Councillor Jarvis, second by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved, the council affirms the action taken by staff to date regarding the drainage matter on Haskins Drive and continue to monitor the situation and seek ultimate solution. Maybe will take out and seek ultimate solution at this point, because we're also just describing next step. I'll suggest. And that staff be directed to obtain a survey and council approve the sole sourcing of the surveyor and the amount of up to $5,000 be approved from this from the engineering operating budget. Any further discussion? Councillor Bochek.
Just for clarity purposes, I don't think it's stated in the resolution what the money would be used for. And I believe in Brad's statement was that he would need to get a survey done of the personal properties that were affected, I believe was the wording you used, Brad, but you could correct me on that. This is kind of open-ended. We could be paying for a survey that's looking at the municipal culverts again, and we're really looking at the overall picture of the drainage of the plan of subdivision, which is just these lots and concerns. So I don't know if we need to be specific or not.
Mr. Sokash?
If you could refer to in general terms to the drainage area, that is what we're looking at. It's the road, it's the wetland on the other side of the road, it's the wetland on the side of the road where there's the current problem, as well as some of the drainage paths on the existing properties.
The staff be directed to obtain a survey of the drainage areas, and council approve the sole sourcing of the surveyor in the amount of $5,000 be approved for this from the engineering operating budget.
That works for me.
Okay. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And I'm going to suggest that we now take well, let's make it a 14-minute break. Let's go wild and reconvene at 11:25 sharp. Thank you. 1 minute until we resume our meeting, folks.
I'm here, but I may be going off video just because I don't want to eat in front of people, but I'm trying to deal with a horrible throat, part of a cold. So,
Oh, joy.
yeah.
I'm back. My coffee maker's just about to finish my coffee, so I'm gonna go off video, but I'll be here.
I'm here.
All right. I'm going to presume that Councilman Yanko will join us very soon. Our next item is Planning Committee meeting schedule. Ms. Way.
Certainly. So the dates have stayed the same. I pulled all of the members of the committee, as well as, I've previously spoken with the district about these dates interfering with their schedule, which they do not. I've conferred with the director of planning, and these work for staff as well. All of the community members responded that they are able to attend these dates, that they are okay with Fridays. A couple of comments I did receive was that when the committee was originally set up, they were to meet bi-monthly, and the increase of meetings is not suitable for everyone's schedule. But understanding that that is the will of council. I did receive a comment that maybe they should not fall on the same week as district weeks. But like I said, this schedule does not interfere with any of the district's meetings. And one of individual has a vacation scheduled for one of those times, but I think vacations happen sometimes regardless of, I could pick any date and someone will have a vacation. So those are the comments received. Once again, I'm proposing these dates and I'm requesting council to approve these for the 2022 meeting schedule.
So basically for the first 9 months of 2022, the planning committee will meet Friday mornings, the last Friday morning of each month.
Correct, until September, which is the Thursday morning.
Thursday, of course, yes.
Yes, but yes.
Council, any discussion? Councilor Cooper.
I don't see Councillor Hazelton. Is he?
He appeared before you did and then went off screen, but he is there.
Oh, he's munching.
He's munching.
I'm going to defer to him. He's the vice chair, and as long as we're accommodating all our committee members in a very flexible way, I don't see anything wrong with this schedule, other than if something comes along and the chair needs to make a change, then they should. Thank you.
Councilor Hazelton, do we get a thumbs up or a comment? Okay, thumbs up. Thank you. I have moved by Councilor Yanko, seconded by Councilor Bocek. Be it resolved that council approve the 2022 Planning Committee meeting schedule as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried. And Ms. Way, I believe the next one is yours as well.
Yes.
In regards to the code of conduct.
Correct. So the last time we presented the code of conduct, I didn't present a draft of the conduct. I presented concepts that had been requested or spoken about, and had council go through and pick their priorities on which items they felt needed to be included. So I've taken those items, put them into a draft document. The bulk of the document is the same as our current code of conduct. The format is slightly different. Any of the application forms or submission forms are not included in the code. I don't think those should be included in the policy because they're living documents, and sometimes we need to change things on the forms. So a couple of the items are moved around. All of the changes are highlighted in teal. Sections that are referencing other section numbers are just kind of left highlighted in yellow at this point in time, because until I have a final draft, I didn't want to keep moving around all the references for the section numbers, but I'm sure reading them you can figure it out. So I guess it's over to you to ask if you have any questions or where council would like this draft to go.
Councillor Hazelton.
I'd like to start off by thanking Karen for all the work she's done on this and pulling it together. I think it reads much better than anything we've seen before. I would like to point out one minor item, section 21.2.2.1. I think there was an assumption that there was the previous wording said 6 months and we put in 90 days, but the previous wording said 6 weeks. I'm not sure we want to go to 90 days. I think that leaving it at 6 weeks is probably what we should stay from an intent standpoint. Other than that, as I said, I read through word for word, line for line, and couldn't find any other small items or even large items. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Jarvis.
So I'm going to repeat. Really appreciate all the work that's gone into this by Karen, and appreciate her patience with us as well on it. It reads as a pretty good report from my perspective as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a reflection of our times or what, but it's almost sad that when we have to have a 27-page document to tell us simply to be decent people. And the fact that we have spent what, 1.5 years working on this?
Almost 1.5 years, yeah. Pretty close.
You know, I absolutely respect the patience and all the work that Ms. Way and our CAO and others have put into this, but especially Ms. Way. Holy smokes, folks! Just be a decent person, and we don't. I mean, this document. Hopefully, we approve it and file it in a drawer, and nobody has to make reference to it for the rest of our lives. But we know it won't quite work out that way. But it's a sad comment. Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier, and I certainly want to thank Karen for working on this, and also do hope that we don't have to invoke this. And I'm hopeful with even though this is a code of conduct for council, that we are in a better place, especially as it pertains to planning and truthfulness in planning. Then I think we may end up in a better spot. Thank you.
Right.
Councillor Bocek.
I'll echo the sentiments of my two fellow councillors and thank you for your work you did on this document. I was very clear that I thought the document that was in place was fine, but reading this document, you've done a very good job. I do have two questions of clarity, if you don't mind, Karen. The one question was, and it's just for clarity, it said that if the integrity commissioner was not available at the time, that we would use a different look for another integrity commissioner. Can you just tell me who would make the decision? I believe in my reading it said that it was the mayor, the clerk, and the CAO, but if we do need to choose another integrity commissioner because our assigned one is busy, who would make that decision?
I'm certain it's built into the contract that we currently have with our integrity commissioner that she has a built-in clause of who would take over. But any person coming in to do that, we would have final say over. I know what section you're referring to, and offhand, I can't find it in the 27 pages.
Okay, that's fine.
But we can make sure, we can add that to the resolution to make sure if it's council's will that it's my impression is that you want it to be our decision versus the integrity commissioner's decision. Is that
yes,
it?
That's what my concern was.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be the one thing. And the other thing was, oh, I forgot to write it down. Oh, if I have a chance, I'll reiterate my second thought, but if we close this off, then I'll lose it.
Any other comments? Counselor Hazelton, sorry.
No, just helping Karen with section 3.1.10,
Thank you.
where it allows the integrity commissioner to have that, sorry, the integrity commissioner can delegate to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So she has that power and it's entrenched in the municipal act.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
All right, so is it the will of council that we modify the resolution? Or is that the authority that the province has given our integrity commissioner? Is that the way I'm understanding it?
Mhm.
Okay, so modification isn't worth it. Well, the resolution you drafted for me, Ms. Way, said have the following amendments. Obviously, that's not the case here.
I think the only one is just to verify that it's 6 weeks from point of incident or knowledge of incident consistent throughout the document. Is what I've taken from this conversation.
Okay, so I don't even know what section that is, or do you want to type that up for us?
It's mixed in throughout the document. It's not one necessarily.
Okay.
But this is what I have.
Okay,
And then hopefully I can bring back a final draft in January for approval.
Councilor Wojcik. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second part just came to me, and that was subcommittees or committees of council. I read in the report that they would also have to adhere to the code of conduct. Would there be a talk with those committees, whether it's the library board or whatever, inform them of the change to our code of conduct? And obviously they may have the option to agree with it or opt out of that committee if they don't agree with it. Is that correct?
Certainly. So it was the will of council that this encompasses all committees. So once this is passed, we would provide a copy to everybody, provide training if necessary for that specific committee, if requested. I don't know if all would need it. But if there is a member who is not comfortable or is unable to fulfill their duties, they're always willing to resign. This wouldn't be coming in place until next year anyways, and all of our committees have a turnover in the fall, potential turnover in the fall. So I don't think it'd be a major detriment if we lost a member. Hopefully no one would have an issue adhering to these rules, but did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Councilor Yanko.
Could we add a section in there that everyone has to sign off on the code of conduct, so they've read it? That means all of council, all the committees and subcommittees and members sign off that they've read it and understood it. I think that would be worthwhile.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I have all members are to sign off. They have read and understand. Correct.
All right. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wade.
And it's over.
Been, quite the effort the last little while. 18 months or 17 months or whatever it's been. All right. So now we're going into new business. And the first item of new business, what we've already taken care of. So we go to the second item. Well, that was withdrawn here. Okay.
It's item 10B.
Yes, got it. Sorry.
Got it now. Perfect.
And that's local data usage. And Councillor Wojcik.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a conversation with our CAO, Jessica, during the week, and unfortunately, here in Port Severn, we have one provider for internet usage, and that is Bell. and I sent Jessica my bills for my particular instant, and that is with Bell, you get 350 gigs of data. That's the maximum package you can buy. And if you go over that 350 gigs, Bell charges you $100 penalty instantly, whether you use 1 more gig or 50 more gigs, there's a $100 charge. If there was another provider, I wouldn't be using this provider, but my normal usage of my family is somewhere around historically 270 to 300 gigabytes per month. With all these Zoom meetings and everything else, it pushes me over that threshold of 300, which I get dinged now $1,200 a year, $100 a month for this little bit of overage. And I understand that counselors do have the right, if we're traveling, to charge for an expense such as gas or hotel or whatever, if we're going to conferences and that. And I just don't know that this expense may fall under that. I was asking for clarity from Jessica on it. She thought best we put it on as a new business item and talk about it. But it could be that no other counselor is in this particular situation, or no other staff member is in this situation. I just wanted to get a feel for what everybody thought about this, because this is an expense, and it's something that I incur every month. I've furnished our CAO with the bills showing it, and I asked her to keep them confidential. But I don't know if anybody's experiencing the same problem, but it is an issue for me. And if there was an alternative, I would certainly be using it. So just thought I'd throw it out there and see what other people think.
Councilor Cooper.
I certainly understand what is being said here. I have to tell you that I've tried to get the service that you're talking about, and it's not available. Unfortunately for us out in the area that I live in Georgian Bay, it's a terrific service that you're getting 300 gigs. I pay during the summer months, $130 a month on my cell phone in order to get 50 gigs when I'm continuing to go over because of Zoom meetings. So that I'm living with that, and really do wish I could get the service that you're talking about. I understand Councillor Jarvis does have that service, and Bell tells me we don't have any more capacity. So to heck with you, you're gonna pay on your cell phone, and I may end up paying an extra $100, not just an extra sort of $50 to $75. So anyway, that's my experience, and it's not a great service. Nothing like the 5 service I have here in Aurora. Thank you.
Sure, the service here is quite minimal, and my regular fee is $129 a month for my 350 gigs. And then if I use 351 gigs, it's an extra $100 on top of that. So it's an expense that most counselors are absorbing. And I just wanted to know if we needed to be absorbing this expense. That's all. Thank you.
Councilor Yanko, followed by Councilor Jarvis.
Well, I guess I have another unique problem here is that I'm with ExploreNet. Now I get unlimited internet, but I only get high speed up to 70 gigs. And my family and I use that up within about 2 weeks of the month. So basically I'm running on low speed internet most of the month, like today. And I would think that the majority of the gigabytes that I used up are through Zoom meetings, either here or SSEA or the district and so on. So yeah, I'm very rarely on high speed anymore. It's mostly low speed because I'm paying $120 and I can't afford more than that. And I only get 70 gigs at high speed. So there is an issue here that not only ourselves, but our families are affected by our activities with council and district council and other meetings, and anything to do with high usage of our internet through Zoom.
Councilor Jarvis.
Yeah, I do have these, I think, similar service to Councilor Cooper alluded to. And I'm finding that the 300 plus gig a month that I have access to is more than enough Keeping in mind that I'm only using the service 6 months of the year. The other 6 months I can shut it down and pay a minimal charge just to maintain it. So I'm a little concerned. I mean, we do get a budget that's part of our compensation package, such as it is, for IT in our own areas, and how we spend it, I guess, is up to us, and how we negotiate is up to us. Broadband is obviously a huge issue for the province, and they got to be dealing with that. But I'm finding that the service I have is adequate for the Zoom meetings I have for council, committee of adjustment, library, and then other people within my household also using the same service on a regular basis, or even more so than me. So that's a lot of bandwidth, I guess, to be, or whatever speed to be using when you're going over 350 a month. But I know that I'm not sure how we deal with it.
Ms. Boudiette. We can barely hear you, I'm afraid.
It would help if my mic was placed in front of my mouth.
Makes a significant difference.
I'm here to talk about IT. Don't I look like a fool now? I'm not here to propose a stipend or anything like that. I just want to mention that we've had staff also have internet issues for working from home. And we've analyzed the service providers, and we've come up with, and I'm not here to sell Starlink, but we have analyzed, and Starlink is probably one of the best options we can get for our staff that are working from home that don't have good internet service. So I'm not sure if any council members has explored that. There is a long wait. It is 4 to 5 months, and yes, the upfront cost to get the equipment is high, about $700 to $800. But all the testimonials, including people that I know that have it, would swear by it. They have unlimited data, and the speeds are incredible, higher than my fiber here that I have at home. So it is an option if each individual council member wishes to look into it and register to get one. That is probably not the subject of conversation here today, which is mostly the monetary value. But if you're looking for a good internet option, Starlink satellite is really what we're starting to look into for staff who will be continuing to work remotely as well.
Councillor Cooper.
I just wanted to comment. Thank you, Julie. And not only myself, but my siblings who have places out on the bay, but also a brother that's in Penetang. Starlink does not have the capacity for new customers for the most part. They may in certain places that you're running into, but they're saying no. It's just like the Bell service. No capacity at the moment to sign anybody on. Starlink have told my siblings, I haven't bothered to contact them, but told them it's a 2-year wait. So just for what it's worth.
Councillor Hazelton.
First of all, Julie, I agree with you. That is probably the right solution going forward. And if Elon Musk is attached to it, it's probably going to be successful. But to Councillor Cooper's comments, the waiting game is painful. I've been waiting since April of this year, and no word whatsoever other than maybe late 2022. And in my case, my investment is probably double or triple that number you put out there, because I've got to get a massive TV tower and power out to a very high rock that would allow me to support it. So those of us up in remote cottage country have a much bigger problem than perhaps subdivision located people. But long term, I think it's the right solution as well.
Councillor Bochek.
Julie, I know there was some talk at the start of this term of council that we were going to change I don't take care of my own personal finances, so I'm just reaching out to you to ask. In my first term of council, we were given $1,200, I think it was, which it was for your data usage, your equipment, your everything for the whole year. And then there was talk at the beginning of this term that it would become an annual thing. And I don't know if that ever passed or if that's even part of it, or are we still just giving that upon your inauguration, given that one lump sum, which is to take care of your technical stuff for the next 4 years, which amounts to about $300 a year, if I remember correctly.
Through your worship, I believe the current annual stipend is $600 and it's paid on the first full pay of the year.
Okay, I was unaware of that, so I'll definitely look into that as well too. So you're saying it's $600 per year for the 4-year term?
I'm pulling up the bylaw now.
I was unaware of that, and I was unaware that I ever received it, but.
Yeah, the little extra money you got paid each January, that wasn't necessarily to cover your Christmas visa bill.
Oh, see, somebody should have told me about this. No, being a counselor is certainly grueling, and to absorb expenses, is not something we want to be doing, for the benefit of the township. So I just wanted to have this on the agenda so we could address it. We could hear what everybody's dealing with as far as their issues, their expenses, and if there's anything that needs to be done about it, let's do it. And if there's not, then let's not. So you've provided clarity to me that we get $600 per year to deal with all our technical equipment and services and everything else. And I don't know, maybe for the next term of council, which I don't know who will be here, but maybe that should get relooked at.
Just as a point of interest, I approached district some point last year and made the observation, district pays for the mileage to get to the meetings that you have in Bracebridge. And for some of us that are a little farther away, like in our township, that figure is a little bit higher. And of course, in the last 18 months, they haven't had to pay it. And I suggested that, that maybe they should take some of that money they've saved and give it an allowance to all the counselors for help covering their additional internet costs. And unfortunately, most of the counselors didn't have much appetite for that. But then again, most counselors at district don't have much mileage either. And so I don't think they quite appreciated the difference, but there you go. Councillor Wienka, do you have your hand up? No, okay. Councillor Cooper.
Just a quick question for Julie. So you've confirmed there was a resolution to that effect. I hate to ask this question, but was our payroll department informed of that? Because I didn't notice it in January, but I'm not aware of this extra $600. I thought there was something at the beginning of the term only, but you've confirmed that it's in the payroll department. Is that correct?
Correct. I know for a fact when I was reviewing payroll when I first started and we were without a deputy treasurer, that I had dug all the way into the bylaw that reflate. I've got staff digging into the bylaw number right now so I could pull it up on screen. But I believe there was something different for district counselors because they were getting some sort of stipend from the district as well. But give me another 2 minutes and I should have that available to show on screen.
Your pay roll of January 7th.
Yeah, it's on it's there. I just saw it as a stipend. Yeah, 600.
So you were paid more in January than any other year. But I think there might have been something extra the first year as well on top of that, but I'm not 100% certain.
Yes, 1,200 at the beginning.
Yeah. So it's 1,200 when you first started, and then each year after was 600. And the theory was that the 600 was going to help compensate for your cell phone as well as your internet connection.
I'm glad glad that I brought this up because now I found out something I didn't know.
It's a good day when you learn something.
That's right. Thank you very much. I don't think we need a resolution, Mr. Mayor. I believe at the beginning of the next term, this should be re-looked at, and I'm sure it will be, but no, I'm glad that we've got the information that we've got out today. Appreciate it.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, about this time, well, next fall, this council will be asked to consider the compensation for the incoming council, and I think that will include any internet computer stipends that we may choose to include in the pay. So if you're not asking for any resolution, shall we move on to the next one? Okay. And that one was withdrawn. And so now we're on item D, which is regards to building permit fee. Councillor Bocheck.
Yeah, I brought this forward in the form of new business resolution because the council did deliberate and pass a bylaw which increased the fees pretty much across the board. And in hindsight, I've been reached out to by a lot of constituents and contractors saying, you know, this is hitting the guy when he's down. We have a COVID pandemic going on. We ordered our windows a year and a half ago. They're not going to be here for another 5 months. And all of a sudden I get 100% increase in my renewal of my building permit renewal. And contractors are the same way because of delays. They're not finishing the jobs they were on. Hence the people that they're going to be contracting to in the future, they've secured their building permits. And all of a sudden they got 100% increase in their fee, their renewal fee. And the contractor hasn't even been able to get to their project yet. So I didn't know if there was much that could be done about this, but I thought great opportunity. We have Julie here and we have the council here. And if there was any thought of rescinding or changing that one building permit increase renewal, it went to 200 from 100. Then we would let council decide if that's something that they wanted to do. If it's possible, and Julie would have to tell us if it's possible first, and then if it's the will of council, we'd move with it. But a lot of people concerned about this, and a lot of people concerned that their builds may be taking 3 or 4 years to complete, and that adds up to an extra $500 in renewal fees during the course of their build. So there is a concern out there. I thought I'd let everybody know and hear what we can do about it, if anything. Thank you.
Ms. Boutiette, do you want to comment before we go to Councillors Cooper and Hazelton?
Absolutely. Through your worship, I wish we had the building department here because I believe the rule is that we only invoice building permits that are 2 years open. 3? Yes. So these are not, you know, yes, COVID has caused delays, but it's not recent building permits that we're charging an open building permit fee. Is it possible to defer? These bills were issued on November 9th. There were a total of 687 invoices sent out. 245 have already paid, which is about 37%. Doing a refund for half of the amount would be an administrative nightmare. However, I'm not telling council it is not possible.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Hazelton.
Having just paid one of these doubled figures, I'm paying it as the resident. So I'm confused by the question with respect to contractors. Are contractors paying them? Because I'm not getting any contractor paying for mine. So I pay the fee. And I'm sure the contractor would just pass it on to their customer if they had one sent to them. Can you clarify, Julie, who receives the bill? Thank you.
Through your worship, the invoice is sent to the property owner.
Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, I'm going to have to recuse myself on this matter because I too got a $200 bill and I paid it. But I guess if I were to vote for it, I would be financially violating my code. So I'll have to step aside. Thank you.
Councillor Wankel, followed by Councillor Jarvis.
I have a certain amount of sympathy for some of these people, but given a 3-year time period, I think most projects can be completed within 3 years. I know when this first came out many years ago, I had 2 outstanding permits, and they were $65 back then, and I ended up paying 1 year to have both my permits continue for a year. But boy, did I get my job done in 1 year. So I think I got a couple of emails, a couple of phone calls on this, but it was mostly people having trouble getting contractors. And I'm saying to myself, you've been trying 3 years for a contractor and you can't get one. I have the hard to believe that. So I know the contractors are fairly busy, but I don't think they're the problem. I think it's maybe some materials. If you can't get the window you want, yes, you might have to wait a year for it. But if I had to wait for the window, I would probably get another window type of thing. So I think most people who are getting these bills this year, I doubt if you'll see them on the list next year. I've got 2 people on the screen right now. Will you be getting your projects completed by next year? And if not, what's the problem?
I want to just make a comment to it. I think we have to remember we're talking here about $100. We're not talking about not paying your building fee. We're saying that the renewal of a building permit after 3 years is going to cost $200, not $100. And I'm thinking in many cases, these people are doing projects are tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands in some cases. I also wonder when Ms. Boutiette talks about all these building permits that haven't been closed and they're sending out reminders that they owe $200. And how many cases are they ones where the job is actually done, but just the final inspection wasn't done because nobody made the phone call, or the contractor didn't submit the final piece of work, and sending out the reminder you owe money often gets that matter cleared up because the buyer, the person who had the septic tank put in, thought everything was done and you walked away. And now 2 years after the tank was put in, you got a reminder, oh, by the way, the final paperwork wasn't submitted. Yes, I'm talking from personal experience. So I imagine that these sort of things do happen. But Ms. Gunby is probably going to correct me.
No, I'm not going to
Oh,
correct
good.
you. I'm just going to add to it. You are correct that some of the times the people only realize their permit wasn't closed when they do get this letter, because they could have had a deal with their contractor to take care of all of that stuff. But people are also made aware at the time of the permit issuance that they have 3 years until this fee comes into place. And so this isn't really, it's not a hidden or secret charge. It is communicated.
Councilor Bochek, you want to make an additional comment?
I'd like to see a resolution put on the table, just so that our constituents know that, we did review this and we came up with this decision as a council. Unfortunately, with Councillor Hazelton bringing up the facts that he did, I'm going to have to declare a pecuniary interest if we vote on this as well too, because I've had an open permit for a number of years and I do pay that now. $200.
Thank goodness mine was closed. Otherwise, nobody'd be able to vote on this. Councilor Jarvis.
I too have an open permit. Yeah, but to be honest, I'm prepared to pay the additional fee, even though I'm going to have to wait, as you just suggested, Councilor Bochek. I am waiting. I believe it is 5 months for windows to be delivered. So, that's just the way it is. As the mayor has suggested or noted, these projects aren't inexpensive for anybody, and another $100 ain't no sweat off my brow. So
Well,
I'd be voting
Councillor-
in favor of maintaining things anyway.
Councillor Wienko can get some windows for you, I think, in less time.
They're not the windows I want. That's the issue.
Oh. Sorry, CEO Gunby, you're going to make a suggestion given all these conflicts.
I am going to make a suggestion because even those who state they should declare are not and continue to speak to the matter. So everything is now officially messed up. So I recommend that no resolution at all gets passed whatsoever, and it just remains status quo. And if your residents reach out to you asking, you can say it was discussed at council. Nothing was passed to make this change to the user fee.
It certainly has been discussed. Councillor Cooper, do you want to add to the conversation?
Well, simply that I was going to ask the clerk if we really do have a pecuniary problem here or not, whether we can vote for it. I'm sort of failing to, if we all have a permit open, I don't know. Maybe we could take turns taking each other on a code of conduct. Might be fun. Anyway, I think.
Well, let's not.
No, we've been down those roads before, and I think the solution suggested by our CAO is just fine. So thank you.
All right, let's consider the matter well discussed. And let's also consider that we're not voting on it. There's no resolution, and we'll go forward from there. Thank you. Now we're getting into bylaws. I believe that's the next step, Clerk Way, unless I've missed things. Okay.
You're correct, sir.
All right, so the first resolution is moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2021-078 to appoint Sydney Levesque as the deputy clerk for the township of Georgian Bay. All those in favor? And that is carried. And if it wasn't a conflict of interest, I'd vote twice in favor. Okay. Next one. Moved by, well, she's not here. So I'm going to say moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the council adopt bylaw 2021-079 being the 2022 budget bylaw. All those in favor? All right, that is carried. Thank you. Okay, and moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2021-080 to regulate the proceedings of council and committee meetings. Is that the code of conduct or what?
No, it's our procedural bylaw.
Oh, sorry, the procedural bylaw. I apologize. There's another document to control us.
Yes.
All those in favor? And Councillor Hazelton is waving at us. I think he's being friendly.
Are you suggesting no discussion?
I should have. Any discussion?
Well,
Councillor Hazelton.
there's a million pages of document in here.
Sorry, if I could just make a comment, Your Worship. The last time this came forward, we went through it line by line, basically, and I was given very specific comments to make changes to. So those changes have all been made and brought forward in this document.
Thank you.
So, first of all, again, thank you to our clerk for all the work she's done to pull this thing together. I did want to make a few comments on section M as in mother, covering electronic meetings. And item 2 talks about having electronic meetings shall be at the call of the mayor. But where it is a committee meeting, I think we had discussed that it should be at the call of the chair of the committee in cooperation with the clerk and CAO. So that's something that I think still hasn't been addressed. The mayor is not, although ex officio member of committees, isn't necessarily the right person to be kind of driving the calling of a meeting. And so that was one comment I wanted to make there.
Sorry, if I can, sorry, can I just respond to that comment
Please.
before, just to keep the dialogue together? So you are correct. We did talk about the committee chair being responsible for making the call of the meeting. And that is amended in a previous section. This is specific about it being an electronic meeting, so it happening over Zoom versus in person, which hadn't really been discussed at great length, other than being in conjunction with the clerk and the CAO.
Okay, so the memories I have was that we went through a massive lull in electronic meetings of committees, and the chairs of the committees were all anxiously wanting to call meetings, but weren't empowered to. And so I think what we want to try to reflect here is that for committee meetings, that the call of the chair, and you can add in, you know, in conjunction with the mayor or whatever, but I think we need to recognize that at a committee level, the chair of the committee needs to be empowered to move things forward, and so we don't go through lulls in meeting times.
No, I completely understand, and that's why we have the set schedule for next year as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just specific about it being over Zoom versus the actual meeting itself.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking though that there may need to be, for example, an emergency meeting called. And again, I think that the chair of the committee should have more power. Anyways, I just wanted to put that out there. And then the one thing that I would like to see in this, and I think we all would like to see in this, is that the requirements for a hybrid meeting. So we talk about electronic meetings, and perhaps we'll need to bring this thing back and have a discussion early in the new year. But where we are entertaining the concept of hybrid meetings, where there's a combination of physical and electronic attendance, there should be some direction to staff for future amendment to this procedural bylaw. And I don't know if we want to explicitly set that expectation now, so that we don't think that we're done, like this is good, but there is a need to deal with this future hybrid state. And what I would want us as council to recognize is we're not done with this policy bylaw or procedure bylaw, but we're good for maybe today, but we probably are going to need to make changes to it in January, February, March time period to deal with the concept of hybrid meetings.
Yes, if I may respond, Your Worship, completely understand the need for hybrid meetings, and we're not there yet as a township. Logistically, you know, we're still closed, and there's no intention, and we don't necessarily have the appropriate equipment to do hybrid meetings. And without knowing the appropriate equipment, it's really hard for us to set any type of standard or procedures when we don't know what our capabilities currently are versus what they're not. The way the schedules are laid out in this bylaw makes it really easy for us to amend one section versus having to redo the whole thing. So when we do come to a point where we need to address hybrid meetings, which hopefully would be at some point in 2022. I mean, when this pandemic first started and we all moved to Zoom meetings, I honestly thought it was only going to be a few months and we would be back to normal. And obviously that has not been the case. But one thing I have learned through all of this is not to make assumptions about where things are going to take us. So we're not there yet, which is why it hasn't been addressed in this procedural bylaw. But when we do get there, we would just need to look at Schedule M and not the whole document.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with our clerk on this. It's a living document, is the way I perceive it. So changes can be made as we go along. But I'm going to go back to Councillor Hazelton's comments about Zoom meetings for committees being called by the chair as opposed to the mayor. It just seems more practical in my mind that if it's a committee meeting and it's being run by the chair in the same way that a council meeting is run by the mayor, well, in council meetings, actually, I think the clerk runs it. But anyway, maybe we should be considering rewording that section of M now, since it's in front of us and it's pretty evident, certainly to me anyway, that it should be the chair that calls those meetings.
And once again, to clarify, it's not about calling the actual meeting. It's the format in which the meeting takes place. And sometimes we have policies that dictate that. And I know it hasn't been an issue here, but it has been an issue in other municipalities. But if it's the will of council, I can change that one line to at the call of the chair for section M2, and we can amend the resolution to reflect that.
I'm wondering if I may, if then and that paragraph ends with as developed and amended as necessary by the clerk and the CEO, whether and the mayor should be thrown in there, so that at least the mayor is aware of the meeting being called.
So as amended, that's the electronic meeting protocol that's developed by the clerk and the CAO. So that's not specific to the actual meeting itself being called. Or it could be at the call of the chair and the mayor, or at the call of the chair in conjunction with the mayor.
I mean, I absolutely think that the word chair should be in that paragraph somewhere.
Yeah.
Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Bochek. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jarvis, were you finished?
Well, no, I just want to follow up. Am I misunderstanding that section 2 then? Karen, is it, sorry, are we talking about the functionality of the call or the actual call itself?
The functionality of the call. So the call itself is at the chair, and that's in another section. This is very specific to just if the meeting itself is being electronic, as in Zoom, or versus in person. Not, it's about the format in which the committee is meeting, not whether the committee is or is not meeting.
Okay, I better understand where you're coming from. I'm wondering if we could perhaps word it a little differently so it's a little bit maybe better understood. I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Sorry about that. I'll be very brief. I just think that we call on chairs for these committees. They're volunteers. I think we need to share the responsibility with them and make sure our intent is about the chair being responsible for the committee as opposed to sort of being just a facilitator and not having any responsibility. So I just like the intent to be as clear as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for our clerk, Karen. In the terms of reference for the different committees, I believe it's stated in the terms of reference how, when, and where meetings will be called. In the case of the planning committee, I believe, since I was involved in the writing of the terms of reference, that the director of planning, when he had issues or wanted the planning committee's opinion on something, that he would formulate a list of what needed to be discussed and then be involved in getting a meeting called to discuss those things. So I think we probably need to look at the terms of reference of each committee and just see what is specific as far as the calling of a meeting, because if the mayor were to call the meeting or the chair were to call the meeting and Dr. Chris, who's in charge of planning, doesn't know anything about the meeting, he was the one that was supposed to be providing the materials to be discussed. So I'm a little confused on who needs to be involved in calling the meetings for committees.
Madam CEO, you want to assist Councillor Bochek, don't you?
I definitely do. So in regards to the planning committee, for instance, that was what was happening a couple of years back, but now, as Karen pointed out, we do have a schedule of meetings. If we want to end this one topic of conversation about this one sentence and just put in conjunction with all required, that covers everything with the chair, the staff person, and the mayor and the clerk to schedule. I highly doubt these meetings that council approved for next year will have to be, if they have to be moved around, that would likely be in a discussion during the meeting, the previous meeting. But because each committee has a set date for the whole year, I find it hard to believe that they may have to call any special meetings.
But
Oh, and
experiences.
also, sorry. The main point I piped up here was because I wanted to let Councillor Bocek know that I've been waiting for this to get finalized before I can bring forward revised terms of reference. So as soon as this is done, we'll be bringing forward the terms of reference to reflect any changes in this document.
I have learned from experience, Madam CAO, that you never say never. So special meetings still could be possible. We don't know what the coming year will bring, let alone the rest of this year. But our clerk, Ms. Way, has offered to show us an amended resolution that might serve our purposes.
Sorry, it's not so much a resolution, but I mean, we'll tack this onto the resolution that the bylaw be amended to reflect Schedule M.2 would be worded as such. So instead of at the call of the mayor, the CEO suggested in conjunction with all required, kind of a blanket statement.
All right. So that just means a group of people decide whether it's going to be electronic or in person, or for that matter, a pandemic may decide.
Correct.
Okay, so I will ask if there's any further discussion in a moment, but the resolution currently reads, moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Cooper, be it resolved that Council adopts bylaw 2021-080 to regulate the proceedings of council and committee meetings, plus then whatever the wording that Ms. Way had provided to us. And while she's putting that together, any further discussion? Councillor Cooper.
I was just wanted to mention that I'm encouraged to hear that the terms of reference are going to be brought forward. For example, we talked about the planning committee here, and my understanding of the terms of reference were that certainly the director of planning would be involved with the list, but so would council would be giving direction to the planning committee, and the planning committee would be giving back recommendations to council and to the director of planning. So I think we want to have a really deep discussion about the terms of reference. So thank you.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. As amended, okay. Any other discussion? Councilor Jarvis.
Sorry, Ms. Wake, do you mind pulling that back up? I think there was a wording, I think there's a word missing. In conjunction, it said in conjunction with, and then there's nothing.
In conjunction with all required.
All required. All people required, all furniture required, or?
It would be implied that this is people.
Okay, fine, okay.
That's how we would word it, yes.
All right.
All right. I'll try it. All those in favor? All right, and that is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen, again for all your work on
Yes.
this.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have closed, and we're not going to do closed quite yet. And other than closed, we really
Your
don't have
Worship,
too much.
would you like me to check and see if Ms. Seymour is available?
Well, I'm wondering whether you want to have a lunch break before we go into closed, or if she's available, whether we want to do it right away, Council. I'm not getting much here.
Council
So
Hazelton's full.
we're passing minutes, and we're talking about CEO recruitment. And I'm presuming that's not going to be too lengthy.
I'm happy to get it over with.
If Ms. Seymour is available.
It should be very quick, and I will not be taking part in that.
Yeah, but you can't leave until we give you the boot.
You can't leave at all.
Yeah, well, because we're not giving you the boot.
I'm in favor that we move right into closed if you're asking a question.
We're just seeing whether Ms. Seymour is available.
Yes, she is.
Well, then let's do it. So now I get fancy words here. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Counselor Bocheck. Whereas Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, provides authority for councils of municipalities to close a meeting or parts of a meeting to the public if the subject matter pertains to a matter identified in Section 239(2). And whereas the Council of the Township of Georgian Bay deems it necessary to close this portion of the meeting in order to address matters under the following section of 239(2). A, Planning Council closed minutes of November 9th, 2021. B, CEO recruitment, personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, labor relations, or employee negotiations. Now be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Georgian Bay moves into closed session at 12:25 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. Now, do you want us to sign out and sign in with the closed link?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll see you all in the next link. Thank you.